Tuesday, February 16th, 2016. Today begins the two-week process of our review of the mayor's estimate for the general fund budget. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Kelly.
Here?
Cleveland. Brady. Present. Ricatelli.
Here.
Conwell. Kenny.
Here.
Mitchell. Pruitt.
I'm here.
Jones. Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Huh?
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I will read the legislation, and then, as tradition, we'll begin with the mayor's transmittal letter. For the upcoming, for this week and next week, I intend to stick to the schedule as closely as possible. If we end early, we'll probably just end early unless it's early enough that we can have the next department, come down. But I think people have planned their weeks based on where they fall on the schedule. So the goal is going to be to stay as closely to the daily schedule as possible. With that, I'm going to begin by reading ordinance number 12516, Councilmember Kelly, by departmental request, an emergency ordinance to make appropriations and provide current expenses for the daily operations of all municipal departments of the City of Cleveland for the fiscal year from January 1, 2016 until December 31st, 2016. Mayor, welcome.
Well, thank you, Council President.
We'd certainly like to begin. We've all read your transmittal letter, but we'd like to begin with your comments, please.
Well, again, thanks for having me again this year. This is, I think, the 11th time
Yeah.
I've been before Council on a budget. And the overall budget is about $1.3 billion. That, however, includes the enterprise accounts such as utilities, airport, and a few small ones. And all those are doing pretty well. They're balanced out. They have cash balances, and they're doing pretty well. Our concern, as usual, is with the general fund, the operating budget, and that is a budget of about, this year we're proposing $560-something million, and we have in revenue about $520-something million. So there was a need to carry over $42 million in order to balance out. So that means that we're not structurally balanced yet. We're still working on it, and some proposals that we have, particularly into next year, will get us there, but we're not structurally balanced. I have this handout, and I know that we've given it to you. We did it electronically. The finance director did it at your committee.
Yeah.
I think she did it at, used it at
Safety hearings.
safety hearings and all that. But I want to, there's a portion in here, there's a slide in here that talks about carryover balances. And I know you don't have it with you, but for those of you who do, it's on page 13. And it goes back to year 2008 all the way up to the current year. And we have a carryover balance in 2008 of $29 million. That went down to $4 million in 2009. That was directly associated with recession, and then it started creeping up into 2012, and we had a $50 million. And this year, we're carrying over $42 million. Now, what does that mean? What I don't want people to think is that we just had that extra money. That was not the case. Not the case. As with this budget, you will see that that we only have an ending balance of $722,000. Now, that's not far different from the previous years. So what I want people to understand is that when we have a carryover balance, that is money that we cobble together during the year. We save money. We delay hiring. We don't do this. We don't do that. We cut costs here. We cut costs there so that we can accumulate money during the year in order for us to have the sufficient amount of money to meet the difference between the cost of operation and the revenues that we receive, because we're not structurally balanced. This year, we're doing $42 million worth. And that $42 million is directly associated with two major things. One is just the basic cost of the collective bargaining agreements. We have just to open the doors in general fund, you have about $440 million in personnel and benefits. So that's just start work every day. So you have about $440 million in salaries and benefits associated with the operation of the general fund. Now that is about a $27 million increase going into this year higher than last year. So that's a cost that is much higher than we've had in the past. But again, this is part of the collective bargaining agreement, salaries, benefits, those kind of things. And then we have the consent decree, which is about 11 million dollars. So you couple those two together, and you have about $38 million of costs this year that we did not have last year, along with some other small cost items that total up to $42 million. Now, the reason I mention that, again, is so that just like when the recession hit, and we had about $30 million in 2008 that we cobbled together to carry over, in order for us to continue the operation of the city of Cleveland and to maintain a certain service level, we couldn't save money during the year. We had to spend it. So in order to plow the snow, in order to pick up the trash, in order to do all those things that you need to do, whether it's recreation or whatever, lot cleaning, we could not cobble that money together because our revenues were going down. So we could not put together money. So at the end of the year, we were only able to carry over in 2009 $4 million. The same dynamic is at work here. The same dynamic. So even though we were able to carry over from 15 to 16, $42 million, because we saved the money during the year in order to be able to fill the gap between the costs and the revenues, so that we can pick up the trash, open up rec centers, sweep, plow, do all that kind of stuff. We're going to be unable in 2016 to save money sufficient enough to carry over into 17 because we have to spend the money. So we just have to spend it. Right. So I just want to make that clear to you. So as I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. I'll answer questions, but that is the basis of what I want to talk to you about today. We will have in 2008. We had about $524 million in revenues. In 2016, we have about $524 million in revenue. So we have a flat revenue over that period of time, and then we went through the recession where the revenue dipped, but it began to build back up. What has happened is that I remember Council President used to ask all the time at these hearings when Council President Sweeney was Council President, and we would tell you about how we were being more efficient, how we were saving money, and how we were keeping our costs in line in order to balance out the budget and maintain a certain level of service based on the revenues we had. And you would always ask, when are we going to stop saving, and when are we going to get some revenue? Well, that was a perfect question, right? Because we began to get revenue. In 2010, we had lost $26 million in income tax as a result of the recession. So in 2009, we lost 24. 2010, we were $26 million down in comparison to the revenues we were receiving before the recession. We are now at projected here in terms of income tax receipts, $315 million. We have over $50 million of increase in income tax revenues coming into the city of Cleveland, which indicates there's prosperity, people are working, companies are making profit. But even with $51 million of income tax alone, additional revenue, which means we recovered what we lost, and we got another $26 million on top of that. But even with that, our revenue this year is still only $524 million. There's several major factors associated with that. One is that because of the recession, we lost $18 million, from the high year of 2010 in property tax to where we are now. We were $18 million down, and plus we're projecting, because of the county evaluation of commercial property, which they think will be they've evaluated a 13% reduction in value, which is hard for me to comprehend with all this development going on. But they now are saying that we are going to get a 13% decrease in property value around commercial property. We're projecting almost another $2 million of lost revenues from property tax this year. So that's $20 million right there. And then when you look at what has happened between 2012 and now, we've lost an accumulative amount of about $111 to $115 million in funding that normally would come from the state. Now, this is not money that they're giving us out of the kindness of they were giving us out of the kindness of their heart. It was based on a formula, and that formula never did give us dollar for dollar return. So as we, and this is a taxing of our economy. It taxes our economy. And so our economy in Northeastern Ohio, in Cleveland in particular, was driving a lot of the state economy. And so as a result of that, when we would send money based on taxes that the state was taxing our economy in various forms, it would go downstate, and then based on a formula, we would get a share back. But it was never dollar for dollar. But we have lost, now I think this year we're projecting at least a $30 million loss there, right? That we would have gotten but for all these cuts. That's $50 million. Plus if you include fines and forfeitures, which is really a court-driven thing about what they project their revenues will be in terms of collection on court costs and tickets and things like that. And red light cameras, you put those together, you're probably around anywhere from $13 to $14 million there. So you're talking about $60-something million that we have lost in a very short period of time that would go towards the operation of the city that not only would have us structurally balanced and be able to cover not only the salaries and the wages and benefit increases, but the DOJ also, and still have some money left over. So I want you to understand that our problem here is not that, that we're not holding costs. As a matter of fact, we're holding costs to our own detriment. We're holding costs to our own detriment because we cannot deliver the level of service we'd like to deliver if we were structurally balanced and had some left over. And if you have something left over, then you can increase your capacity to deliver that service. One final thing. I know there's been a conversation about 0.5% income tax. I know Councilman Reed has mentioned it. I've heard people talk about, other people talk about it on the floor. We have been analyzing this for months. Because we fully recognized what our dilemma would be, not just this year, in terms of just trying to hold things together and deliver a basic level of service. We also knew that based on what I've explained to you, that 2017 would be very, very problematic in terms of our ability to balance budget. You good? As well as whether or not we can even maintain the level of service that we have to date. It's all on here. Not even talking about being able to increase service. So yes, we are proposing that as we move into 17, that there will be a need for additional revenue. That revenue will not come from the restoration of revenues from the state. It will not come from increased property values. It will, in the increase that we receive in income tax will not be sufficient to cover it. And since we live in the economy, if you've been watching the stock market and you've been watching the international and the global economy and the flow of that economy and the interaction of that economy, that we don't know if we're facing a recession or not soon. We don't know. So we have to be considering all of these things, and we have considered those things. And as a result of that, we are going to be seeking a 0.5% income tax increase. If we could do a quarter, for those of you who I've heard say, well, what about a quarter? A quarter will only get you treading water. It gets you what you got now. That's what it'll get you. It'll cover the gap. It'll cover the 42 million. So you'll wind up balanced out, but you're not going to get any more service. No more service. If you want additional service, you need a 0.5%. The 0.5% will give us a little over $80 million. That $80 million will not only cover the gap between revenues and costs to run in the city, it will give us approximately $40 million to increase our capacity to deliver service. So what I've done is, for $40 million, you can buy a service. The only question is, what do we, as a council and administration, decide? What are we purchasing for that? Now, the question is this. The question is this. As I say, we've been analyzing this for months, so we knew pretty much in the mid of last year that we were going to have to do something, and we thought that it would probably be an income tax increase. So what I'm doing now, so that you understand, I have my directors and my chiefs looking at a 2017 budget already. And that 2017 budget has capacity increases in it, whether it's building and housing, whether it's health, whether it's recreation, whether it's whatever it might be, And we're also doing what we're required to do on the consent decree. We're required to do a staffing, deployment, and equipment study for police. And we're in the process of doing that. So with these two things, and then with the police, we have to, take it to the monitor, get approved, all this other kind of stuff. And what I've instructed the police to do, as well as other directors, is just don't give me a capacity building that will not produce a quantifiable service delivery increase. So if we're asking the public for so much money, this is what we will be promising them they will get for that money. Okay. And you will have some quantifiable approach to this. With police, I've instructed them not to look at their staffing and deployment and equipment plan just to meet the consent decree. That would not serve us well. What I've asked them to do is to look at the staffing, deployment, and equipment plan that would do crime reduction. And this crime reduction will also be in line with the consent decree. So again, we are going to make it to 2016 at a certain service level. We cannot save money during the year to be able to fill the balance for next year. We're going to spend that money this year just so I can maintain the level of service that you have now. With the income tax increase, it will allow us to get structurally balanced, where in that year we will raise enough revenue to cover the cost of the operation in that year without the need for a carryover. and it will allow us to purchase additional capacity to buy additional service in areas that we agree upon. So that is why I said to you that it's not, as you know, Council President, I always do, we try to do a 5-year projection, we knew in the middle of last year that we were going to have to do something in terms of revenue. We couldn't cut costs anymore. We couldn't cut service anymore. So now we're going to have to do a revenue increase. We're going to have to get structurally balanced, and then we're going to have to comply with the consent decree, but also be able to give our people a better level of service. And that's what we're studying now, what that will be. I think that, when do you think we'd be finished?
The 17th?
Yeah.
Are you next month?
With what?
The 2017?
Yeah, looking at, so we'll have a general idea.
Yes, sir.
All right, but we probably won't finalize that because I'm gonna have to look at it, right? And then I'm gonna have to share it, right? So I'm gonna look at it, and then I think with the police, where are we with police on the consent decree? When do you think that'll be finished?
The staffing analysis?
Yeah,
2 months.
2 months? So you're looking at June,
Yes.
at about time the monitor approves it. So let's say by the middle of the year, I can come back to you in a setting like this and kind of talk to you about what we've come up with in terms of additional dollars if we did a 0.5%, what we would like to purchase with that, not only in terms of safety, but public works, building and housing, whatever it might be. Okay?
Well, thank you, Mayor. As you stated, I think this is the 11th year that, most of us have really been doing this, most of us at the table here, but a good chunk for many. But, as you kind of indicated, this year's different.
It is.
For year after year, we've talked about a structurally balanced budget, but there wasn't like a plan to get there because we're still, subject to what the state chooses, how much of our money they keep.
And if I may, Council President,
Please.
we did have a plan. It's just that, that plan, that's why the best laid plans, right? That's why when the state did what they did, it kind of undermined our plan.
Right.
We would be structurally balanced now.
But for the cuts from the
But
states.
for
right.
the state cuts, the loss in property tax revenue is still to fall out of the recession, and plus the loss of the camera revenue plus fines and forfeitures. We would
Right.
not only be structurally balanced, we could
Would have
potentially had about $20 million that we could buy additional
Services with, right. Yeah, and if I were to kind of summarize how our budgets have been over the years and what we've done, and we talked about the recession, and to anybody who may be watching, I think that the city has done, in life, there's those things that are within your control, and there's those things that are outside of your control. And the things that are within our control, if you look at, a lot of the job growth for prosperity, like we've done what we can to create an environment that would encourage investment, and I think that shows in our income tax receivables. I think it shows in terms of, nobody pays taxes voluntarily, so if people are paying more taxes, it's only because they're working more and earning more money. But, the big government types in Columbus have, chosen to keep, between the big government types in Columbus, the county's assessment, it's just really, there's not a lot of, we're not the federal government. We can't print money and we can't run deficits. So we have to do something. So I think that if you look at, where we are now, I think if people ask, you should, be more efficient, you should cut back, I'm pretty confident saying we've done that.
Council President, anytime, we have about 7,500 employees, and that's down maybe about 1,500 from when I took office. So we were probably around 9,000. Now we're down to about 7,500. Anytime you have that number of employees, there's always some room for improvement. But the basic general efficiencies that we have created and we have been the beneficiaries of up till now is really, we're at the bone.
Yeah.
And the system is under stress, and the divisions are under stress, the employees are under stress, because I'm still demanding of them to do more when they're getting less and less and less. Now, I can't even require them to do more because of the stress of the system and in terms of they just can't do more than what they're doing. They're doing the best that they can. And again, you can always squeeze something here, squeeze something there. But if you're talking about a real systematic approach to having a better efficiency, we've reached that.
Right.
And of course, when you have 7,500 employees, somebody gonna do something they ain't supposed to do.
Sure.
You know, and so you
And
find
that'll
that
become
out.
the anecdotal snapshot
You
of,
find that out, you deal with them, and you move on.
yeah.
But the point is, they are still picking up trash, plowing snow, cutting vacant lots. They're doing all these things, and they're doing it with fewer personnel, and they're doing it with fewer resources.
Right. And the way I've told my constituents that have asked is, when you look at the carryover and how we've done since 2010, that there's certain budget, ways you can deal with a budget of this size to create efficiencies, to not hire certain positions, and to have a certain carryover. But with the expense that we're facing, those days are over, and there's no more rabbits to pull out of hats. There's no more efficiencies to be gained by not filling positions unless we want to experience a tremendous loss of service.
Well, Council President, we're not the private sector, so we're not in business for profit. If we were in the private sector, in order to maintain the same profit level, we would just cut costs, which means they lay off people. We cannot do that. We're service. Our bottom line is service. If we cut personnel below a certain point, you either reduce that service to is just a token, or you
Right.
eliminate it completely.
Right.
And that becomes our choice. And no, if we're unable to deliver service, then we fail to meet our bottom line and be able to provide those dividends to the people of the city of Cleveland. We're not a for-profit company. Over 80% of our costs is in personnel and benefit. Over 80%. So as I said, just to start the operation of government is $440 million. Just to start. And that doesn't include overtime and all that other stuff, right?
Yeah, nobody's benefits are going down in cost.
Nobody's benefits are going down.
Yeah, cost of personnel.
And if I may say, contrary to what people may think, public employees are great employees.
Absolutely.
I come here.
Absolutely.
I come here on the weekend, and I sign in. Let's say I get here around 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. There might be 50 people that signed in before me. They're not getting paid. They're here. They're doing their job.
Right.
There are people out in that sub-zero weather out there doing what they do.
Yeah, when the water mains break, somebody's got to fix
They're
them.
out there.
Somebody's got to be out in
They're
the
out
cold.
there. So
Right.
public employees are great employees.
I agree.
And they do their job. You have bad apples no matter what organization you're in, but in the vast majority of our employees are good employees. So they deserve the benefits that they get.
Absolutely, yes. But
But the problem is,
yeah,
it costs you.
exactly. And public sector, private sector, the cost of benefits of healthcare is going up. There's no way around that. And, when you have 7,000 plus employees, that's going to be a chunk of the budget. Overall, understanding that, we can probably get through this year, but come 2017, we'll have spent any efficiencies will have all been gained. There's not going to be.
There'll be no
left
ability to
Right.
save money this year to carry over next year. To the point that we can fill the gap between cost and in revenue.
Right, so.
There would be a service reduction or service cuts.
Yeah, so we have a challenging year ahead of us for everybody that's in municipal government. And before I cease my comments, I just want to do a quick commercial and thank the mayor for your commitment to our city's infant mortality initiative. And I think that 2016 is going to be a very good year for that. So I want to just thank you for that and all the other ways we've dealt with challenges throughout the tough times. So, and with that comment, I would like to turn the floor over to our colleague who is here for his last budget hearings, the chair of the Health Committee, who really kind of did light the fire for the Infant Mortality Initiative, Councilman Simperman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for this opportunity. Thanks for your leadership, Mayor Jackson. Thanks for another budget. I was reading through the budget last night, and I was trying to remember 18 years ago, 21 council members, you were a colleague, the world was a lot different, and the budget was a lot different, and yet there were things that I noticed in the budget this year that didn't exist 18 years ago. The Department of Sustainability, through your leadership and through the inception of Councilman Zone here at the budget table. People ask if budget tables matter. They do. I remember the first time it was ever discussed was during that time when you were the chair of finance and we were making this stuff happen. I noticed our community benefits, which were a dream. And Councilman Conwell and I were talking when I used to sit down here with Councilwoman Lewis, who used to get so mad that nothing was happening, and then it happened, and now we just consider it part of what we do. Healthy Cleveland, and the council president just mentioned infant mortality. And you kept saying, Mayor, when you first got elected, you can't save your way into prosperity. Right? You can't. There's no way to do that. There's got to be an element of risk. And I guess, as I'm looking at this and I'm reading an article side by side to the budget, which is 11 signs that a city will succeed, and the city of Cleveland happens to be hitting those marks, right? That's not contained in the book, right? This is the stuff that's important about how many times are we going to be able to plow? What are we going to do in terms of being able to provide service? But, Mayor, the one thing that I've always been grateful to work with you on, and the thing that I think you do best is that you handle perspiration very well, but a budget can't just be about sweat, right? Because on a day like today, what are we dreaming about? What is it that's going to give our young people hope? They can get great snow plowing and garbage pickup and wonderful things in a lot of other cities, but there's stuff about this budget, Mayor, and there's stuff about you that's very aspirational. And that's about us looking to do something bigger than ourselves. And so when I was talking to somebody about transitions, they said to me that a great leader always has a comfortable knowledge base of who and what they are and an equal comfortability with the unknown. And in those moments, they make leadership decisions. And I guess for me, to you, in this last time that I'm going to have this opportunity to work with you in this capacity, there seems to be a lot of things in the budget that aren't going to get the Cleveland.com headline. Right? They're not going to be the thing that leads on Channel 5 at night. But there's a lot of things in here that didn't exist before that do now that make the quality of life of our people better. Whether they got a job that they could have never had before, whether their children are less obese because we're actually paying attention to what they eat, whether babies aren't going to be dying because infant mortality is a focus. And I guess I would just ask for you, in every budget, there's something that I think you got to feel good about in addition to everything that you're doing to balance the books. There seems to be a lot of that in this, and I just want to thank you for that and just say to you, with regard to Healthy Cleveland, with regard to everything else, is there anything in here that, in spite of the fact that we have to make hard decisions about income tax and snow plows and everything that we do in a legacy city, what is the thing in here that, for you, would make you think like, hey, we continue to be a place where people can be inspired?
Council President, to the councilman, thank you for that. But nothing in particular, and I'll tell you why. Because you're absolutely right. This is just mechanics of it all. It is those other things that you do that really better ensure the future of Cleveland that are not necessarily in here. Because as you mentioned, community benefits, it took us some time to get there. And now is it working like we want it in terms of it being producing the kind of benefits we like? No. But are we so much better off than we were before?
Yes.
So now what is happening, people are looking at Cleveland and say, well, if I'm going to do business in Cleveland, here are the rules. And when you do that, then there's a better and a greater sharing of that wealth, a better and greater sharing of those opportunities. which lends to quality of life. It lends to some things that, that not having those things you'd have a problem with. The same thing with Healthy Cleveland. It is a notion as to when you come to Cleveland, who are we as a people, who are we as a city, and how do we value people and lives? And particularly the value the lives of those who are the most vulnerable among us, the old and the young. And what do we do, and how do we go outside? This is just the mechanics. We just do what we do here. This stuff will come and go. But to have healthy people, to have children who don't die in the first year of life, to have seniors that can get assistance when there's no one but them, to have young people and local contractors be able to get contracts and be able to be employed. Those are the kind of things that will carry us through this. So this stuff here, this budget is just, as you said, it's just a budget. It's numbers. You know, the law requires you balance it, so you balance it, right? And if you can't balance it and you don't have enough revenue, you cut costs. You cut costs, you're going to lay off people. But in that, you have to have some, and it comes and it goes, in that you have to have something that outlasts the year-to-year operation, the year-to-year numbers. And those are the things that around people that is all throughout here, but really will help sustain us beyond this year's budget, next year's budget, all these other budgets. Same thing with education. Even though it's not in this budget, it is one of those factors that will sustain us even in when we have difficult times with budgets. So we have to invest in people, and we have to invest in our ability to have people be able to sustain themselves and to be able to sustain the city. And then we'll get through this year-to-year stuff. This comes and it goes. I've been in 26 years, I think, as elected officials. I've seen 26 of these things, and they come and go. What lasts is what you do for people.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council President.
Thank Councilman oh, wow. Thank Councilman Simperman. Councilman Cleveland?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mayor.
Good morning.
I think your last statement is really the capstone of what we all do, what we're here for. You know, what we do for people is what matters. And I'm also reminded that, you know, it's easy when things are flush and money's flowing, and you know, it's easy to govern in those times. And I think these times will define us as a city, as an administration, as a council, how we manage this. And I'm confident in our ability to do the things, not only to follow the piece of paper, but also to do things that really matter and take care of the people in the city of Cleveland. I just had a couple of questions I just wanted to ask you to maybe elaborate on. In terms of the income tax increase, and understanding what it does for us or what it will do for us today and for next year, and also understanding that we don't have any control over the global economy and the stock market and all those other factors that influence local economies, how does this position us for, let's say, you know, 5 to 10 years from now? You know, are we going to be looking at, you know, in 5, 7 years saying, oh, we got to do another income tax increase? You know, this one was a long, long time coming, and, you know, honestly, I think way overdue. But, you know, how does this position us as a city in terms of just the structural changes we need to make in the budget, but also, you know, looking at maybe how we look at ourselves as a city of the future and our ways of delivering services to our people?
Well, Council President, Council Lady, it's hard to say what will happen 5 or 7 years from now. We project it out based on the knowledge we have now and some indicators that I guess those who analyze these things use certain little things that they use to project revenues or costs and things like that. But it's hard to determine. What I do know, however, if we don't do it, then it's those of you who've been through mass layoffs and service cuts and reduction, we'll see it again. You know, I went through it with, I think when Mayor Campbell was mayor and I was council president, it was hundreds of people laid off. You know, we did it during the recession. We minimized that because we got temporary concessions, so we minimized. So any of you who've been through mass layoffs, that's what you will experience because you have tens of millions of dollars in shortfall in terms of revenue versus cost. But what it does, it gets us past that and gives us an increase, gets us past that, and gives us the ability not only to maintain, but to increase service and to purchase additional service. Now, when we look at that, we also should be looking at how do we deliver those services. Now, we've done it based on the current operation and the current models. We've become very efficient at it, but we've reached the end of that. So the question becomes, is there a need to come up with another way to do certain things? And those are the kind of things that will be on the board as we discuss going forward. Because what we do not want to do, we don't want to pay for something that will just, as you say, have a short shelf life. We want to be able to balance out, get structurally balanced. We want to be able to increase services in areas that we agree upon, but we want to make sure that we change the way we deliver services in some areas that would better guarantee efficiency and give us some long-term projection of stability of costs. So those are the kind of things we're looking at. But it is hard to figure out what's going to happen from 5 years from now. We just know there's some basic indicators. I know what would happen if we don't get it, and I know and I know that if we do get it, things will be better than they are now. That's what I know.
Okay. Thank you, and through the chair to Mayor Jackson. And I like the way you break things down so that the average citizen, I think, understands what's happening with our budgets, and that's really critical. You know, we've got a story to tell. How we got here, where we are today, but also where we go in the future. And it's going to be very important for our residents to understand that and be able to say, yeah, this is what we need to do.
Council President, Council Lee, you're right. Sometimes people vote against their own interests.
Right, we see it all the time.
They vote against their own interests, and a lot of it is because either they don't understand the details of what it is, or they're following a philosophy that it is not in their interest. What we're talking about is something that is in the interest of the people of the city of Cleveland, is in the interest of the people who come here to work, is in the interest of businesses and corporations who have invested here. It is in all of our interests to ensure that this moves forward in the way that we're proposing. Now, Cleveland is not the only city. There are a lot of suburban communities, both Democrats and Republican, who I guess have a sense of liberation now because they can now talk about this in a way that is not filled with politics, of the politics of whether you can do it. It's a very practical, factual, matter-of-fact kind of thing. Is it either this or is either that? And you find that many suburban communities are having the same discussion right now.
Yeah, thank you. Well, Mayor, I'll stop right now. I know a lot of my colleagues have questions and comments for you, and we're going to continue the discussions, but I look forward to that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, on that point,
Hey, Councilwoman?
thank you. Mayor,
Yes.
on the point of the income tax, we passed a resolution, but it had no date on it for going to the ballot.
That's right.
So my question would be, you've been studying this, so when do you think you would be putting this on the ballot in order to realize the revenue that you need to go forward and, to
Right.
maintain, increase services? What are we looking at?
All right,
November?
Council President to the Council Lady, What I want to do is first, I don't want to get ahead of myself and then have to back up. So that's why I'm waiting till we complete these staffing, deployment, equipment for police, and looking at safety, and we're looking at operation to see, so I can get a general sense as to how much money we would have left and what would we be purchasing. See, and that would give me a better indication as to when. And to be perfectly honest with you, the other consideration I have is that there is a school levy in November. And that school levy, even though it will not be an increase, from my understanding so far, as talking to the superintendent, it appears it won't be an increase, but still it has to be voted on. It's like a renewal. So I'm weighing these things to see not only the practical side of it, but the likelihood of it being successful. So that means that November could work. It could work because it's presidential election. You have a lot of people coming out, and which means I think it would be supportive of what we're talking about, particularly if we educate them properly. But if it doesn't work, then it would be within the first quarter of the next year, which would be 17, right, which I understand is an election year for everybody. Right. But stars don't line up all the time. It is what it is. And so it doesn't take away from the validity of it, because I will say to you that and I don't do hypotheticals, but I'm going to do one for you.
Thank you.
Hypothetical.
Very special.
I'm doing hypothetical.
Yes.
Hypothetical, Council Lady. If we have to do it in 17, it would probably be within the first quarter. Now, I'm hypothetical. And I would say that at that time, you would probably get a budget from me that would reflect a full year or reflect 9 months of cut. So what happens is that how the budget, how the levy or the tax increase comes out will determine which budget it is. That's basically what it comes down to. Now, I would propose in the first quarter a full operation. A full operation, which means you'd have to use a rainy day fund in order to sustain a full operation for the first quarter. If, in fact, the tax did not pass in the first quarter, then it would be 9 months of the budget would be 9 months of reduced service and layoff. If, in fact, the budget did pass in the first quarter, since I believe the proceeds are immediate, then what you would see is we would begin in the second, third, and fourth quarter, we would begin to ramp up according to the promise we made. So if we promised that if we had, let's say we had building and housing inspectors, and we hired a certain number of building and housing inspector, and for that, this is what the public should believe they get for that in terms of additional units of service. Then we would be able to ramp up during the second, third, and fourth quarter to get there. The same thing with police. Let's say for the staffing plan, there's 10 police officers per million. That's not including overtime, but let's say 10 police officers per million. And let's say the staffing plan comes up, and I don't know, so don't quote me, media or anybody else. I do not know. But let's say it comes up with 50, 60, 70, or 100 new police officers. Well, just do 10 per million. So if it's 50, that's $5 million. If it's 60, that's $6 million. If it's 10, it's $100 million. You see? So what would happen would be that we would stage these things in order to get up to capacity. So 2017 would be the year that you build the capacity. And then it would be set for, as Councilwoman Cleveland said, 2018 would be the stability of it. So even if we did it in November, the same scenario would happen. The only difference is you would know, I would be able to propose a budget knowing what it would be for the next year. If it failed in November, then I would propose a budget that would have the cost cuts. If it passed November, then I would propose a budget that had the increase in service, and it would ramp up. It just wouldn't happen like that. It would ramp up.
Right.
So hopefully so that's why I haven't decided, and of course, it's just not my decision now.
I know.
I can plug a date in there, but you have to say yes. See, so that's why we haven't decided when, because there's so many unknown variables right now in terms of cost and all those other. I want to be able, as we do this, to be able to talk to you, to be able to talk to the public, so they know very accurately what is it that they will be purchasing, what should they expect as additional service, how should they expect these, when should they expect these things to ramp up in a period of time. I just don't want to just, in a political notion, say, well, let's do it in November because I know I'm running or we're running in 17, even though I haven't made up my mind. All those of you who thought you heard something, you ain't heard nothing. Because I honestly have not, because I got work to do. Right? But by this time next year, I'll know, you'll know. But I'm pretty sure all of you, or whoever, the mayoral race or the council race, will be in 17. And it's not, how do you raise taxes in a campaign election year? You raise it because you're telling people they're going to get something, and that you're leadership, and you're responsible for it. It's the same way you do it in 16. It's the same dynamic.
Thank you.
Just a follow-up.
Okay.
So you would be proposing it in a special election if you were going to be doing it in the beginning of 17, because the
which is
primary
harder-
is not
harder-
until the
harder.
day after Labor Day in 17. It always is for our election season.
Council Lady, we can have the discussion about that, but that is like and I don't mean this in a negative way, but it's like a waste of breath sometimes, because all it is a discussion. When
It is
we
a
do
discussion,
something,
yes.
it will be very concrete, and it will take in all the factors that you've talked about, that I've talked about, that everybody around this table it would take in all those factors. The goal here is to succeed, is to be able to take care of the people of the city of Cleveland. And sometimes it's not to our political convenience in order to make that happen. It's just that simple. But what we do is what we do. And so what I'm saying to you is that I'm looking at this, and I know that you are too, as to what is in the best interest of the city of Cleveland. How do we position Cleveland for the future? How do we guarantee a certain quality of life or a certain standard of living? How do we do these things, and how do we do it in a way that we educate our people? And I believe that the people of Cleveland, if educated properly in terms of what this really means, and who pays, and all this, that whether you do it in 16 or 17 is not as big an issue as it is whether or not it's a special election. That's the biggest issue. That's the biggest issue.
I mean, I was just curious about the special election issue, and, I will leave it at this, but you could also consider a special election in 16.
Council Lady, I could consider a lot of things.
Right. I'm
And-
just-
and-
I'm just
and
saying.
A lot of consideration.
And I'm
Just
saying
saying.
that I am considering a lot of things.
Okay.
I am not going to make that decision as to what I recommend to you until such time as I have my facts together, until such time as I can lay it out to you, and that's probably around the middle of the year, lay it out to you as to what's going on, and then we'll make a decision at that point. But I'm not going to be politically scared on this. I'm not. The timing may not line up right for us. But the point is, what is right And the right thing to do is our consideration, not whether or not it's comfortable for us. Okay?
Yeah, that's what we signed up for. So, thank you, Mayor. Thank you,
Comfort
Councilwoman.
wasn't my issue, but, okay.
Councilman Pruitt?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through the chair to the mayor. Question for you, especially you've been very detailed in talking about your plan if additional revenues are realized. About 6-7 years ago, you did Operation Efficiency Task Force. I know that you have your staff doing another analysis. Is that something you're thinking about doing as well?
Council President, to the councilman, we've done several things. We did Operation Efficiency 1 and 2 in my first 2 or 3 years, and we've implemented that, and we got good results. Then what we hired a consultant to do, to look at our operations in terms of general funds, and we proposed to do some things that actually gave us additional revenue, like the waste collection fees and things like that. So yes, and again, you know, can I say this? The only good tax is the one you don't pay.
Right.
That's the only good tax. But the next best one is the one you pay and you get something for it.
Right.
And so we were going to be looking at operations again, not only in terms of, I don't think we can squeeze more efficiency out of here. You know, if we can do more, we can work on accountability and things like that, but efficiency is going to be problematic. What we can look at is how do we deliver that service? Not in terms of efficiency, but in terms, is there a better way to deliver this service than what we're doing now? And those are some of the things that we'll be looking at.
So through the chairs, but also, what about just looking at the way it's structured? I mean, because
That's my point. That's what I'm talking about.
even the way that you have your departments and divisions structured, when you're this is also an opportunity to propose a new way of doing things.
That's correct.
So it gives us a chance to kind of look at it. Is it properly structured in the right place? Are there some divisions or departments that can be expanded, eliminated, combined? I mean, is that something you're considering?
Council President, Councilman, we actually did look at that, and that's how we come up with public works as opposed to service, parks, recreation, and property, with 2 departments put into 1. Now, there's some people who say that that's too much for, you know, under one thing. But the theory, the concept was a great theory and concept, but as you know, is how do you execute and how do you implement these things? And so we're looking at, since we have merged those 2 departments, is there a better way to do things within the department? Whether it's on the administrative side, you saw my eliminating service. We have eliminated service. We get tremendous pushback from eliminating services. But those services we eliminated was just a factor of it. We just couldn't afford to do it. Expanding service is a factor of just having a sufficient revenue, along with changing the structure in the way in which you do business. So it's a combination of both. So you can have revenue and put it into the same structure, and you'll get that much benefit. You can have revenue and put it into a different structure, you get that much benefit.
Right.
So those are the kind of things that we're looking at.
And then just one final question. What about, have you ever thought of like a innovation officer? Somebody that kind of is always way out ahead, right? I mean, you have your staff that's dedicated to doing the day-to-day operation. They're looking a few years out into the future, but somebody that's way out, 10 years out, looking at trends and looking at the way that you deliver these nuanced services in a different way. Somebody that's not tied to the day-to-day delivery of service, but is always thinking critically.
Council President, that best practice, what is the new thing of life? I find those things sometimes come and they go. They're like fads sometimes. And I know that there was a time when someone had this particular machine that would scrape the street, process the asphalt and lay it down. And we looked at that and we evaluated that. There were some people, you know, from your side that was encouraging us to do it. Fortunately, we didn't do it because it was a great idea. The theory was great, but when you put it in practical use, it just never worked.
Right.
So the question is, yes, we do have that. We don't have one somebody, but part of what we do in order to kind of keep us on the cutting edge, whether it's in economic development and where that's going, whether it's in sustainability and the fact that we're going where we believe the future economy will be with wind turbines and things like that. LECO is making progress. We're looking at, buying these new vehicles, particularly around waste collection, that helps us to be more efficient and less personnel driven in regards to that. So they're putting the automatic vehicle locator on the snow plows so we know where they are at all times, so that we have a way of seeing if anybody, who's on their route,
Right, exactly.
who's doing what they're supposed to do, that kind of thing. There's even the technology, I don't know if they used it or not, where it can measure whether or not the truck should drop salt or not. So we're using the technology, but what I don't want to do, I don't want to get caught up, and because we've been guilty of this, of celebrating the tool.
Right.
We celebrate the tool. We got this tool, and we think we've arrived, when in fact we haven't, because either the tool doesn't, our operation culture and the tool don't fit, right? Or it's just not functional for us. So what we want to do is to make sure that as we look at these things, to vet them out, to test them, and then when we believe that this is what we need to do, then we use it, and then we change behavior and culture within the division in order to meet that. And that's the way we look at it. But no, we do not have one person.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Casey?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, to the mayor, thanks for coming down today. And going through the budget, I noticed that unemployment rate in the city of Cleveland is down 5.7% since 2011. It's actually at probably one of the all-time lowest at 4.5%, which is good, because that means, with you indicating earlier that we've shrunk city employees, that just means that the corporate world in the city of Cleveland is growing.
And people are working. Somebody's working somewhere.
Exactly, which comes back to the income tax, that it's not on the employees of the city of Cleveland, but it's on a much larger base than just city government.
Right.
I wanted to point out one thing, Mr. President, to the mayor.
Please.
Special assistance to the mayor. We learned last week, we noticed that the number had increased from last year to this year, but we learned last week that that's due to hirings that have to be done per the consent decree.
A lot of it,
And it's just not the mayor saying, I want more employees for my office. If you could just touch on how that consent decree is affecting.
Right.
The
Well,
budget.
let's, before I do that, and don't let me forget, but before that, I just want to talk about the unemployment. Yes, it's down, but unemployment is measured by those who are actually seeking jobs. So when you look at unemployment in Cleveland, even though we are moving in the right direction, which means people are making profits, companies are making profit, they're hiring people, it does not truly reflect the magnitude and the level of people who do not have jobs, particularly young people. You know, the age of probably about 18 to 30 years old. It doesn't reflect, because they may have never had a job, or if they had one, they stopped looking if they got laid off. So I just want, so I'm always mindful of the fact that even though something looks good on this side, there's this reality that we have to deal with. That's why the community benefits agreements and trying to have people hire local companies for contracting, whether in construction or in procurement, and having those companies employ local people. That's why that's so important, because it keeps the dollars flowing in the community. Now, in terms of the consent decree, you're right, we have special assistants to the mayor, and those are at-will employees. I don't know, is my budget increased in the mayor's office? Right, so my budget has not increased. So I don't have an increase of, I got special assistants to the mayor, and then all of a sudden I got a huge mayor's budget. I don't.
Right.
So if I have vacancies, I hire. And now I have to hire them according to what the function I have to perform. A lot of that is around consent decree, And you'll see that will continue. Because when we look at the implementation coordinator, when you look at the Inspector General, is Inspector General special assistant? Is he? No, that's a civil service.
That's correct. You have 27 individuals, and you ended the year with 21, and you were down 6
Okay.
and then this year you went
Right.
again,
And
27.
so I budget for 27, then what I'll do, I'll hire in there, but it'd be around what I need to do, and a lot of what I need to do this year will be around the consent decree.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Brancatelli?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of quick comments. One, I think you talked about loss of property value and a big change, and we're going to see the commercial values change. And certainly there's I think, a little misconception that our drop in property values were, certainly the foreclosure crisis were a part of it, but also there was that huge run-up during the last county structure where they were artificially raising prices based on a lot of greed in Wall Street, based on artificial appraisals. And so you saw that run up, and now we're suffering for it. And not only the foreclosure crisis and the abandonment, but also now we're getting to, I don't want to say normalized, but we're starting to come back to what would have been a normal growth pattern for property values. We're starting to hit those marks again. So we're starting to see those changes, and certainly through your team's leadership in building the housing and others, hitting that mark head on. And I know you talked about job growth, and as Councilman Casey talked about, the unemployment number being down. I know Director Nichols has done a great job along the Euclid Corridor in Midtown, but certainly a lot of the downtown projects, the hotel is fabulous, but the replacement of the job market there, and once those construction jobs go away, we're going to be to service wage living jobs, which is going to put more stress on our budget. So, there's a lot of impacts on our budget, but certainly I know was mentioned earlier, the budget is the budget. It's what we're dealing with. But I also look at it as an incredible guide. It is a guide for the coming year. It sets policy, it sets tone. There's components in this budget that you mentioned in your transmittal letter. Certainly would like to hear further discussion around the $25 million neighborhood development fund. That wouldn't be in here but for your direction and leadership to say that's an important component. That development fund talks about helping elderly stay in their homes, helping down payment assistance, helping underwrite new construction, helping underwrite rehab. Can you talk a little bit about where we're going with that fund and kind of the policies that we expect to come from that?
Council President, Council, what we've done in doing the $100 million, $25 million was set aside for neighborhood development. So that money cannot be spent downtown, which is also a neighborhood, by the way. Is also a neighborhood. And let me give you a long about answer, but I think is important to understand the context. If we invest public dollars, $1 downtown, you'll probably get $8, $9, sometimes $10 in private investment in return. See, so it's a good investment. If you invest $1 into what we call consumer neighborhoods, neighborhoods that are doing well and people are consuming the lifestyle and they want to live there, they want to go to the restaurants and all this entertainment and stuff. You get maybe about, for $1 you spend, you get about $4 in return. So pretty good investment. Other neighborhoods, however, if you spend $1, you're lucky if you get 50 cents. And in some instances, we'll spend millions of dollars in capital and receive no benefit other than the government spending of those dollars in that neighborhood. That is where the 25 million is focused on. It's focused on how do we create additional tools, not just put $25 million into the existing tools, and then just say, well, we got $25 million more, let's spend it. Well, that model hasn't worked for all of Cleveland. It's worked for downtown, it's worked for some neighborhoods that are doing quite well. But that model will not develop other neighborhoods that no matter how much money I put into those neighborhoods, they still don't have that private leveraging and return on that dollar. So what we're looking at, the policy around it, is how do we look at neighborhoods that are neighborhoods that the model doesn't work for? Because we still have tools, and we still have dollars for areas of the city of Cleveland that have good returns on our investment. But we don't have tools and we don't have dollars for other areas to guarantee a return. So how do we partnership with the private sector? How do we create a public-private partnership and tools that will give us the ability to say that if I do this, then I'll get that from the private sector in terms of investment. I'll give you another example. If I'm, you go to some neighborhoods, and you go to the neighborhood and there's an investment there, and you get a project that actually is a nice project. It services the neighborhood, great. But in 5 years, you have to subsidize it again just for it to survive, because what would cost to do debt service on that project by a private developer, you cannot charge the lease per square foot to cover that debt. So you're going to have to subsidize it. And it means it's an ongoing subsidy. We cannot be in that position. We cannot be in that position. So what I'm attempting to do with this money is to create a scenario and create tools that will allow that project, after the subsidies do roll off, for the period of time that we put it, that it will be able to sustain itself. Then you'll have real growth in those areas. Then what you'll begin to see is then when we do a road, when we do a rec center, when we invest in other parks, when we do these kind of things, you'll see that is adding on to some vitality, some growth. Now, the final thing I'll say to that is that I'm not looking to fund projects. I'm looking to transform neighborhoods. That's what I'm looking to do. I already have tools and dollars to do projects. But $25 million, how can we take $25 million and transform a neighborhood but for this new approach to life, this new model of economic development, a new model of capitalism, so to speak, that will allow for that neighborhood to benefit from that amenity, but also have that amenity be able to sustain itself beyond when the time the subsidy roll off. Now, the final thing on it, we have, we're looking at some studies and stuff like that. You know, I remember I just said about consumer neighborhoods. A consumer neighborhood doesn't produce anything. It really doesn't. What it does is it has a quality of life and a standard of living that people purchase. So they purchase it by moving there. and then you create these amenities to make it more attractive for people to be there. See, so it's more than just one thing. You just can't do a project and make that happen. You have to invest in the revitalization of the whole neighborhood. See, and so, but you have other neighborhoods that, as I said, you get no return on the public investment, but they are the neighborhoods that provide us the greatest opportunity for growth, believe it or not, because they provide the raw material that you need in order to have growth. It may be vacant land. It may be proximity to something. It may be access to interstate. It could be a whole range of things. So what we're doing, we're studying all of these components, all of these things, and saying, now, which neighborhoods, if we did this one thing in, that would leverage all these other things because they have the proximity to this, they're close to on-ramps, off-ramps. You say they have the vacant land where you can invest in. They have existing storefront, maybe vacant, but existing. And how do you get that going? And how do you get private sector investment in that for the long haul that does not require us to subsidize it every year? And the minute we stop subsidizing it, then the doggone project falls apart. Or what they do, they reduce service, and they become substandard merchants with substandard merchandising. Then where are we? We're in the same spot we were in the beginning. So that's the concept around it. And no one is more anxious to spend the money than I am, but I'm not going to do that without I want the results. I just don't want to spend money. Again, I apologize for being long-winded, but we have, on terms of projects, we have tools and we have money. And if you bring the project and it's a viable project, we have the tools to deal with it. And what we find under the old economic development model and the capitalist kind of model is that those projects will only come to certain neighborhoods. They're not going to go to another neighborhood. I got to get them to go to another neighborhood.
Well, we certainly had a robust discussion last week in the block grant hearings, and Acting Director Cosgrove did a great job of outlining.
Were we on the same page? I hope.
Absolutely. He was nodding his head in agreement the whole time, so.
Good.
And I think your point around vacant land, certainly in this book you talk about 3,300 acres of vacant land. We're hopefully going to be getting additional dollars to remove the blighted conditions from our hardest hit funds, which will help create more opportunities. And I recalled Director Ripkut, one of his first budget hearings, talking about him being the Department of Opportunities and creating opportunities through this land. Though in reimagining, and one of the areas you talked about in this book around reimagining and 8 big ideas, certainly reimagining and looking at our green versus gray infrastructure, community gardens, urban agriculture, a lot of the things that were brought up over time. When we talk about staffing and issues around how do we reuse land, one of the areas, our land bank, our city land bank is growing exponentially. And I'd be curious to look at how we can, I think each year we talk about how do we move land quicker out of that land bank into productive reuse. I'd be curious to hear how we can look at moving that forward again.
Okay, let me give you a concrete, Council President and Councilman, let me give you a concrete example. Opportunity Corridor. Now, it's not my project per se. I support it now because it's moving. But it is a project that is pretty much supported by the business community and does provide some benefits if done right. If done right. So we have Opportunity Corridor. Opportunity Corridor is going to go from I-490 up to 105 in Quincy, and then it's going to go down 105 over into University Circle. The biggest concern of the people whose neighborhood the corridor went through was whether or not there was going to be a benefit to those neighborhoods. And one, and then secondly, is there an overall benefit to the city of Cleveland beyond just a more convenient way from the highway to University Circle? Those are two major questions. Now, in order for it to be what we want it to be, a benefit to that immediate community and a benefit to the to Cleveland as a whole, there are certain conditions that have to be met. One of those is a community benefit. Now, you know, there was a big press conference around the community benefits. Now, I got there late, and I got there late is because we actually made the agreement on the community benefit about a half an hour because I was holding out my support until we were able to get that commitment. And so far, you know, it's been working, but we have challenges going forward because they want to change the formula. So I got issues. All right, now I'm getting to your point about land. The second thing is there will be acres, not just 1 and 2, but quite a few acres, because it goes through your community over by the, you know, over in that area, goes through your areas, your area comes out in your area on 105, goes up there. But there will be acres of land that now will have access to that you would not have good access to but for this road. The question is, can you develop the land? Now, those of you who have been involved in economic development, the first thing a developer will tell you or business will tell you is that if the land is not clean, I don't have time to wait on you to clean it. I'm going to go somewhere else. So what we've asked the state for are two things. One is to give us some brownfield dollars so we can begin to clean the land now, so when the road goes through there and the road is open, we have clean land that we can market, right? The second thing that we've asked the state to do is to provide infrastructure. You can't build a road and say, well, whenever you get a development, then we'll add the water lines. Or somebody has to pay for the utilities, the infrastructure that will allow for that to be ready and able to go quickly. So the thing about the land, and I'm using this as an example, is that we get caught up sometime in the theory of things and then don't ensure that the practical side for implementation is followed through. So as you know, I'm holding up on transferring land. I'm asked y'all not to give them any more money until such time as we can guarantee that this road is a real opportunity. That is the kind of thing I'm talking about. Because with that land, if it's clean, if there's utilities there, we have tools to ensure that the investment in that area will be successful. And it will be successful because it will be a private venture with some help from us, but the return on whatever dollar we give them will be great. But we'll have immediate opportunity to do what? Create jobs. Immediate opportunity to utilize land and utilize it in a way that it will spin off and be a direct benefit from surrounding institutions like the universities, the healthcare center, all these kind of things. So that's an example of how do we use land and use it in a way that's effective for us in our ability to move Cleveland forward. If that answers your question.
No, I think, control of land is everything.
That's it. And that's why I don't want to give it up.
Yeah, and I just want to figure out from the basic land bank lot to Mrs. Jones, where we can take that $1,000 a year bill off of our tab and then have somebody who has expanded lot versus a large development like the Opportunity Corridor,
Right.
Points us in that direction.
And to Council President, and to also be able to assemble the land through whether it's the land bank, the foreclosure process at the county, or whatever, to be able to assemble it so that you have the ability to do the development, not just have a theory, because once you put it out there, then people start paying their taxes and the price of land goes up.
Oh, yeah, and our county land bank is going to be an incredible partner with us this year as this hardest hit funds come in, because then we will have site control. And this is lastly, Council President, thank you. You talked about Opportunity Corridor leads into the next discussion within the book, and as Councilman Simperman talked about, wasn't that long ago you didn't have a Department of Sustainability. This year, the theme of sustainability around transportation, the year of sustainable transportation, the Opportunity Corridor is an example of that, where you have bike lanes, pedestrian lanes, those things that were you dictated be baked into the development. That helps connect all of our residents. I'm looking forward to the completion of our first complete and green street, Fleet Avenue, this year. Your leadership around having that first sustainable project that will be shown off during RNC. I think people will see complete and green as a practice that we're moving forward. If you could talk a little bit on where you see the year of sustainable transportation and our bikeways and our connectors moving forward.
Council President, Councilman, several things. One, there's several large things that have given us the opportunity to move forward like we want. One of the major things was when the governor agreed to give us the lakefront parks back, and we then subleased it to Metro Parks, and that allowed for some things to happen that was not happening before, and some investments to happen there that has a better connectivity with biking and hiking and doing all those other kind of things. Another major thing that has happened that has been to our advantage is the investment RTA is making in its new stations, whether it's the one on Buckeye in Councilman Johnson's ward. I think there's one out in Mayfield Road, right, and then you have what happened on Clifton, where we built something similar to Euclid Avenue, where now they have a bus line going into Lakewood, all the Cleveland State line. So there's talk about other areas, and when you talk about the 25 million, you build off these things, because now you have a flow of people, you have people moving. Then, so that's another one, the RTA's investment. Then the third thing, a large thing, is how the agreement that we've reached with council on spending now tens of millions of dollars on road resurfacing and reconstruction. This year, we're proposing $10 million, where before it was for residential streets, where before it was 4.4 divided, so now it's $10 million. Not only that, we're looking with our issue 1 funding, we'll do our 20% on that. That will leverage 80% of whatever the cost of that road is. The same thing with NOACA. So last year we did about $75 million worth of roads and things like that. This year we're looking up to $60 million that we'll be doing. So and including in that bike lanes, although some people don't necessarily like them, but then other people do. So we try to reach that balance as to where to do it and where not to. But and so we'll be doing all those roads. Most of them will have, particularly the main thoroughfares, will have bike lanes associated with it. What we would like the state to do, and what I've had conversation with them, is why don't you give us, don't take away from us because we want to do a complete street in terms of certain sustainable activity, because that costs extra money,
Right.
and they don't give you preference on that. You actually fall to the bottom. So what we're trying to get from the state is to say, look, if it costs extra money, we're still going to pay our 20% of that extra money, and you have to pay the 80%, but don't put us down at the bottom, why don't you give us, if we're moving in that direction, at least hold us harmless and preferably give us a preference. So those are the kind of policy kind of things and some practical things that we're doing to make it happen. Again, is the lakefront and the connectivity with the metro parks and all of that. It is what RTA is doing, and then the new policy around spending tens of millions of dollars to improve our roadway.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilman. Councilman Reed?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Mayor. Good morning. Mr. Mayor, first of all, I want to thank you and your staff for a job well done by keeping the city of Cleveland moving forward, particularly Director Dennis and her staff. And I know now, so to speak, the chickens have come home to roost when it comes to the state, the governor who's going around the country telling how great he is and fantastic he is with the state's policies and their budget cuts and the whole light. So I appreciate what you and your staff been able to do. And I guess that leads us to the discussion you had with my councilwoman Brady with the tax increase.
Right.
You know, that's going to be a very important discussion. I look forward to having the discussion with you, your staff, and my colleagues. Mr. Mayor, I want to go to the budget book as I looked through it since we received it, and I looked through it again this weekend. I was looking for the violence reduction plan. I know I think the chief, the director came over and told us that for, I guess, every year we lose about 75 police officers through attrition. And I looked at the number of police officers that you were talking about hiring this year. It may or may not keep up with attrition as a whole. But I always remember what the director has always told us since when he was the commander in the 4th District and then the chief of police, that we're not going to arrest our way out of this problem. So I'm not going to go on that end of it. I'm going to go on the end of the prevention side. So as you know, we already have 11 homicides already in the city of Cleveland. The vast majority are in the downtown investment areas. As you know, I've talked about and continue to talk about it, does your budget bring in, I didn't see it, to provide the $200,000 for the violence interrupters program?
To the council president, to the council, well, you know it doesn't.
Okay.
Right, so you ask questions, you know it doesn't. What I will say to you is that we are working on the crime reduction strategy and plan. Remember earlier I said that part of the consent decree is we have to do a staffing, deployment, and equipment, and that I've instructed the police to use that as a way to look at how to reduce violence. Now that's on the, as you mentioned, that's on the enforcement side. And you're right, you cannot arrest your way out of this. Crime is really a symptom, is a symptom of a greater ill. And what has happened many times in the past, just not in Cleveland, but all around the country, is that we believe that we can solve this by just adding more police officers. That doesn't work in and of itself, because the police can kind of keep things down or they can move it, but they can't solve the underlying cause of crime. Where I have, and what my administration has been working on, is some long-term things and some short-term things. The long-term things that we've been working on is education and job creation. Now, if you want to reduce crime, street-level crime, a good education with opportunities for good employment or business opportunity, you can reduce street-level crime by half overnight. Now, that doesn't mean somebody who is well-paid or have a lot of money or well-educated don't commit crimes, you know, a la Wall Street and all that. So that happens. But if you're talking about street-level crime, a good education, Job opportunity or entrepreneur opportunity are the key to making that happen. Now, that's a long strategy, and we have things in place in doing that. The Cleveland Reform Plan, the Community Benefits Plan, our OEO offers in terms of preferences and who gets contracts and all these kind of things are woven in it, but that's long term. It is more of a systematic approach to life. It's the kind of thing that Councilman Simperman talked about that is not reflected in the budget, but actually impacts the budget and impacts quality of life, standard of living. The other thing that you mentioned on the prevention side is I saw you Friday at Mr. Dettelbach's retirement luncheon, and you spoke on behalf of Stance. Well, that's what Stance does, doesn't it? You go to every meeting, you have input into what happens there. It's about that prevention side. It's about going in and looking at young people at risk and seeing what can we do to help them to make this choice rather than that choice. You were talking about the violence, I think you call them violent interrupters.
That's what they call them, Mr. Chairman.
Violent interrupter. We have supported them not out of our budget, which you're correct. That's why you don't see the 200,000 there. But we have supported them in many different ways, whether encouraging the private sector to be of assistance to them or working with the foundations to be of assistance to them. And we're now, as you know, they're now, many of them are under the Boys and Girls Club, and they're going to have a new director over them. And we're in conversation with the federal government, the Department of Justice, around the coordinated activity around youth violence in particular and a prevention strategy. And I know that you're part of that. You're part of it because you go to the different meetings. So yes, we have plans. Now, but as the Councilman Simperman said, everything that we have planning that is of substance that gets us a long way is not necessarily reflected in the budget. So there's not $200,000 in the budget. You know, I could put $200,000 and say, yeah, I'm put $200,000 in here and I'm going to address the prevention in. I'm going to address that. It would be a facade. There is so much, and this is so deep, in terms of what we have to do to really affect violence, not just in Cleveland, but all around this country. But we're concerned about Cleveland. It is so deep. It is a really, like you talked about innovation. What's the cutting edge? You know, how do you change structure and stuff? This is about how do we change the structure of our economy? How do we change the structure of our criminal justice system? How do we change the structure of our political system in a way in which how we behave and when we deal with these kind of things? So it's a much broader, in-depth thing. So I don't want you to think just because there's not $200,000 in there being proposed that we're not working on this issue from many different aspects. But you're right, it's not $200,000 in there.
Right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to put on record, before doing an after reconciliation, I'm going to be asking for the $200,000 to go in for the budget, to go into the budget for the violent interrupters, because no matter what city I go to, and I travel all the time, and I talk to the law enforcement people, they tell me one of the reasons that their crime is down is because of the violent interrupters. So to say that we work with the business community and we work with the foundations, that's all well and good, but the city of Cleveland needs to put, as you say all the time, some skin in the game to allow the violence to be reduced in our city. But the other thing I would say about violence to be reduced in the city, you know, everybody talks about, and we're having this conversation about, let's go back to the Clinton days, economic Clinton days. Well, the Clinton days, as I tell people all the time, is that we put people in jail. You know, and the conversation is coming up now, how many people of color he put in jail. But the other end was people with jobs, and that goes back to what you said there. So, you know, Martin Luther King said that a budget is a moral document. So I would ask you, Mr. Mayor, do you think it's morally right for us to continue to put forth documents, budgets, that clearly, Mr. Mayor, go into your OEO department? And I look through your entire OEO department in the budget, And then I looked at the documents that are supposed to be looked at by the Fannie Lewis Committee, Workforce Committee, that we have not done in as many meetings as I like to. And I looked at the documents. I looked at the one for December, if you like, and I made a copy for you. But I'll first of all go to what was said in the newspaper a few days ago when it says between 2009 and 2012, minority-owned businesses received 1.4% of Cuyahoga County contracts. That's $9.3 million in work. Is simply not acceptable. Now, yourself and Joe Roman, the Greater Cleveland Partnership, brags about, because you put it in the Transmittal, about the billions of dollars of work that's going on in the city of Cleveland and in Cuyahoga County. But your own documents, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, show that the ones in December, of the 117 contracts that were levied, only 50% went to Cleveland residents. I mean, your documents continue to show that we've got a 20% resident participation in work hours, but your own documents through your own OEO, and I've got to go upstairs to get this because we don't have committee meetings, so we can talk about it in public. But what I continue to see, we are spending millions of dollars on people to go to work, but those people don't live in the city of Cleveland. And if we are going to reduce violence in the city of Cleveland, we've got to get people to work. You look at your document. Hold on, Mr. Chairman.
No, if I may, because.
But hold on,
Councilman, I'm the chair, and the mayor's going to respond.
Mr. Chairman, you're talking about, every time, you're talking about a whole lot of things. And I think I've addressed a lot of what you're talking about as to some of this stuff going to take longer than others. But in terms of a moral document, do I think the budget is a moral document? You know, that's what Martin Luther King said. You know, I can't argue with Martin Luther King. But he also said there's some morality in telling the truth. And so, you know, and I think that's more tangible than just what's on some paper. Now, with all that being said, I'm not responsible for what the county's figures are. What we have done in terms of ensuring that minorities get contracts and ensuring that Clevelanders get work is unprecedented. Unprecedented. And as I've said before, it is not where we would like it to be, but it is so much better than where it was. But it's an ongoing process that you have to work on. And having a conversation about it is not going to get us there. It's about the work that you put in. And we put in work every day for this effort. We put in work every day for this effort. Now.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, so let me ask you this, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Councilman, the mayor's not done. Mayor?
Oh, no, you let
Okay, Councilman?
So let me ask you this. We put in the work every day. There's a fire station, as you know. I've lobbied hard to build a fire station over in the Mount Pleasant neighborhood, and it's being built on 131st and Union. That fire station is 40% done, almost 50% done now. You're working on it, you say, and I understand that. These are your documents from your own department. 122 people have worked on that project so far. 9 are African American. 1 Hispanic. Of the 122, only 8% of the work hours have gone to Cleveland residents. This is your document that comes from your Economic Development Department that continues to tell us that most likely will not, it says, developer will be penalized for shortfalls. Let's take the one project that's in one of the poorest neighborhoods in the city of Cleveland, the Care Alliance project. That project has a number of people who would love to go to work. For the low income number, they're at 0.35. That's the low income number. For Cleveland residents and work hours, they're under the 20%. If you look at the economic development numbers, they just keep continue to say, one says the tax abatement project, we need assistance in legal to determine the penalty. These are projects that are 40 million, 11 million.
Are you talking about the station now or another project?
I'm talking about this is the complete document from the City of Cleveland utilization report that we're supposed to be going over in workforce But this is the document that came out in December. This is the pages, not just one. These are the pages of the projects
Right.
that have been going forth in the city of Cleveland.
Council
that have not
President, is there a
met
point?
goals.
No, yeah,
Is there a point?
Well, the
do you have a
point-
question?
The point
or-
is, the
and
point
what
is.
it relates to, I'd like something that relates to the
Right.
2016 budget.
Well, the point is that we can continue to talk about, you say we're 51, you got 51 more $1 million in income tax. That's great, and that's fantastic. But the people that are bringing it in, there's somebody from New York City that's working on that fire station project. What I'm
If we
saying to
can-
you, Mr. Chairman, and to you,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, is if we are going to reduce violence in the city of Cleveland, if we are going to get these neighborhoods that you call the non-consumer neighborhoods, if we're going to get people to stop committing the crimes that are committed, we've got to get an OEO department that is going, and I looked at the budget, that is going to be more aggressive in saying that what we're not saying here.
So,
Look at the
Councilman, if we could get back, did your question relate to the mayor's estimate? Did your,
Right, he's getting there, so let him go.
okay, Councilman.
I'm trying to get there.
He's getting there, he's getting there. It's hard for him, but let him go.
Wow, it's hard. Wow, it's hard. It's very difficult.
Welcome to my world.
I mean, no one else, everybody can just talk and talk and talk, and no one gets interrupted, but as soon as I start talking, you always seem to get interrupted.
Poor guy.
I'm just trying to get to a point to where I'm looking at the numbers that come out, where we've closed projects. These are not just minor projects, where you continue to say, close, penalty matters, close, penalty matters, close, shortfalls, penalties for shortfalls. The penalties that we have are just so small and minor. So somebody has a $40 million project, they may pay $100, I'm exaggerating, $100 for the penalty. But yet that project is gone. You look at the hotel project over on 9th and Euclid. I mean, I walk past that project. I look at the other projects. People of color, people in the city of Cleveland are not working on these projects. That's what the county is saying, and that's what your numbers are saying. And I'm saying to you, Mr. Mayor, who I have the utmost respect for, that we have got to get a more aggressive OEO department or some monitoring department, because that's what the county is saying, that is saying to these contractors, we love the fact that you're building a new hotel across the street, but look at the numbers of the people of color and women that are building these projects. And your numbers, these are your numbers, these aren't mine, these are your numbers that say that 50% of the 117 contracts that were let out are under the number of Cleveland residents. So I'm saying to you, that is there a way that we can get more aggressive into the OEO department to get more monitors or whatever got to get there, or get your directors to be more vehement on getting more Cleveland residents to work? Because I would say that, one, we're not going to arrest our way out of this problem, but we can employ these people that see it. Because in closing, I just say this, next month, they're going to open that hotel across the street as it relates to asking 300 people to go to work. Look at the difference if you go over there, and I'm willing to go over there with you. Look at the difference of people who will be applying for those jobs to clean those rooms, to clean those beds, to cook in those restaurants, compared to the people that's working over there right now. It is unfair for us to continue to use city money and public dollars for individuals to take those dollars back to Lake County and Lorain County and Geauga County and to New York, while the people in our wards and our communities and our neighborhoods don't see it. And the prime example to me is that fire station. I go past that fire station every day.
Need a new point, Councilman, or I need to...
And to see that only 8% of
We-
the
you already
work
said that,
dollars
Councilman.
have gone to people in the city of Cleveland, that is immoral and it's wrong.
Thank you,
And we should
Councilman.
shut that project down until we get it better.
Thank you, Councilman. Mayor, would you like to, I'm not quite sure
Well,
what the question...
in general, because it's so much. But if the councilman listens to himself, he will see that we're not that far apart. The difference is I do stuff and he just talks about it. Now, out of all the respect, just like you got for me, I have for you.
Yes.
But when you bring it that way, it comes that way. Now, but I will say that welcome, welcome. This is something we do deal with every day. This is not a new phenomena, not only in Cleveland, but throughout America. It's not a new phenomena. This is stuff we fight for, and we have enforcers we fight against every day. And are we successful all the time? No. No, we're not. But it ain't because we're not in the fight. And we're not, and it ain't just about the conversation of it. It's about what we're going to do about it. And we have been doing things, and there has been substantial improvement in all these areas over the last 10 to 15 years. Substantial. But this is the way, it's the way the world is set up. It's not set up for certain people. It's never been set up for certain people. It's set up for other people. That's what happens. It's the world we live in. So I can sit around and complain and bemoan the fact about how other people, I can do all that kind of stuff. Probably sound good doing it. But it won't bust a grape. I'm in the fight, and I'm going about doing this in a way that will get us an outcome. Just like the council, where do we see Cleveland in 5 to 7 years? I see Cleveland much better off in terms of those figures than they were 5 or 7 years ago. And they'll be much better off 5 or 7 years going forward than what those figures say. And when and be honest with you, Councilman, if I don't mind working with you. I don't mind working with you. If you bring it right, I deal with it right. Example, I just told you that we're going to be looking at whether or not we pass a tax and we have extra capacity and where that capacity should be. That would be a great conversation around where do you increase capacity in OEO to get an outcome that you want, and to measure that outcome to say, if you give me this A, B, C, and D, then we can have D, E, F, and all this other stuff as a result of that. This is a great conversation. Great conversation to have, to be constructive, to get something done. Again, with the same respect you give me, I give back to you.
Well, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I'm closing-
Councilman, your time is up. I'm going to move to the next questioner. Councilman Zone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mayor. Good morning. So I did want to just kind of make 2 brief comments and then ask a question and a response. I appreciate how you've kind of encouraged or almost mandated your your administration and all the various departments to weave in sustainability and what they do. You talked with Councilman Pruitt about innovation officer, how you ask each of your various departments to think innovatively, and I know that municipalities all across the United States are looking at, and I'm really happy that Director Collier is updating our zoning code, something that we need to do. It's really thwarted our city's ability to right-size our city and do things the right way. So I'm glad that you've charged him with that task. We have other municipalities across the country that are looking out when you think about innovation. Driverless cars, when you think about mobility and how we use our infrastructure, thinking 5, 10 years down the road, what potentially will be there. Other municipalities are going to, and I know Chief Darnell Brown has really been working to advance our technological capabilities, about other governments doing real-time reporting. We got the AVLs on not only our safety vehicles, but also now on snow plows and service vehicles. And eventually someday we'll be able to have real-time reporting where citizens can go online and see where the snow plows are and when potentially they might be on their streets. And that's something that I really look forward to when it becomes fully operational and we can do that. Just last comment on the innovation front. I see what like the city of Milwaukee is doing with their fresh water. Let's face it, 20, 30, 40 years from now, where we're situated with that fresh body of water right behind us, people aren't going to continue to be moving to Nevada and Arizona. They're coming back to the Midwest. And with your support and effort around not only LECO, but also using that fresh water, that fresh body of water as an institute, that maybe we could use that to leverage more job creation around that. So any just general thoughts about innovation and how you drive that down through the various departments?
Council President, Councilman, you're right, LECO is a prime example, and where when we started Sustainable Cleveland 2019 in 2009, it was about how do we transform our economy
Right.
from what it is today and the way the world operates into what we believe the world will be doing tomorrow. So we want to be where the world is going, not where the world is today. And one of those areas that we looked at was in renewable energy, clean energy sources. And you're right, this lake provides us that opportunity because we applied for it and got a planning grant to allow us to continue in planning to putting wind turbines in there. Now, the concept on this is how do you then use Cleveland not only as the source of the energy through the wind turbines, but how do we manufacture and assemble those turbines here in Cleveland and export them to North America? I'll give you an example. There are many companies that make component parts on the turbines
Right.
in this region.
Right.
So we were looking at how do we now create an economy around this? How do we create an industry around this where Cleveland becomes the exporter of this technology, becomes the exporter of this innovation? And as you know, Europe and even Asia is much further ahead than we are in terms of the utilization of renewable energy. And so United States and North America in general, but the United States in particular, is behind. So that the demand for that is there. And as I say, LECO is moving forward, and once they move forward and it becomes final, and it's a private venture.
Right.
It's a private venture. Now, we will be consuming as part of the agreement a certain amount of, what do you call them?
25% of the megawatts that those
Right,
turbines are going to
so many megawatts or 25%,
Five.
whichever is less.
Right.
Right. And so we'll be doing that. So automatically, Clean Public Power will be a distributor of clean energy that puts us in a very good position, because there are people who make decisions as to where they locate their businesses, where they live, based on the policy and the way in which we deal with this whole sustainability issue.
Right.
Now, the other part of your question around clean water, just like any resource, the more scarce it gets, the more valuable it is.
Right.
And there's still a conversation of trying to run a pipeline from the Great Lakes out west,
Right.
because of the scarcity of water out there. And even California now is still in a drought.
Right.
It's still in a drought. So there's a lot of economics around clean water, not only in terms of the value of it, but also in terms of the recreational use and other kinds of use that you can bring water, where clean water is essential for an economy. So we have the tools, now we have the resources, and we have assets. Now what we have to do is build on those things and build on them in a way that really positions Cleveland for the future.
Right.
So, and one final thing, I remember back in the early 70s, mid-70s, and I began to understand this since I become mayor. We had a choice when the world was going a certain way, heavy manufacturing, the kind of jobs that created was going offshore, was going overseas. And so we had a choice in Cleveland to make a choice whether we would stay in that mode which was going away, or would we invest into a future economy. We chose to stay where we were.
Right.
And as a result of that, we are feeling that impact now. And so what I want to do is not to make that same mistake. I want to invest in the future invest where the world's economy is going so that Cleveland can be positioned for that growth and for that prosperity and can deal with the issues that the councilman talked about. How do we ensure more jobs?
Right.
How do we ensure a more equitable distribution of contracts? How do we ensure all these things that really lead to quality of life and prosperity as a whole, not just with one group of people?
Yeah, no, it's well said, and I'm glad that all of the departments are thinking about this and thinking about innovation. You know, it's remarkable, we're in the position that we are. I mean, even in your opening statements, you know, coming through the recession, we had 3 tough budgets. We had 3 very tough budgets with significant loss in revenue just as a result of that. And then couple that and throw on top of it not only the past 3 years, 12, 13, 14, or 4 years, and 15 with the state budget cuts, but also the impact it has on this budget. But thinking about 2017, and that's where I'd like a response from you. In your words, why don't you articulate, I mean, we all know we got 36 collective, I think 36 or 37 collective bargaining contracts. Most of those contracts are expired. We got renegotiations coming up with there. We got the DOJ commitments. We have our debt obligations we have to pay down. Why is, because we're here talking about 2016, why is 17 much more a difficult budget than you believe this budget right here before us?
Council President, Councilman, simply because we won't have the revenue to support current service. And I won't be able to save during 2016 enough money to carry over in 17 to pay for that savings.
Right.
So you're going to need an increase. It's going to be an increase. You just need it. But again, I forget which council person spoke on it, but that's why growth is so important.
Right.
That's why positioning Cleveland in a way for growth is so important, because when we settle up on, because we start again in April of this year on collective bargaining, and we got to figure out what that will be in terms of wages and salaries and, you know, benefits and stuff like that. There are other things with permanent costs, ongoing costs, not including the staffing plan for police, but an ongoing cost of around $7 million extra. So we know we have built-in costs going forward. The only way that we can sustain it is goes to the point that somebody raised, how do you know you don't have to raise taxes again? The only way you can do that is that you have growth in your economy.
Right.
And to have that growth benefit us. Right now, that growth does not benefit us. And that's through state policy and some other kinds of things that are going on. Yeah. But we have to ensure growth. Innovation ensures growth. Being ahead of the game ensures that you can get into the game at a less expensive than if you wait until the game mature.
Right.
So we have to be able to grow our economy. We have to be able to create, as Councilman Reed talks about, how do you reduce violence? How do you create neighborhoods where people want to choose to live, work, play, and live there and do business there, because it has the amenity, it has the quality of life, it has those things. So all of these things you have to work on at once. But right now, in the immediate sense, 17 is going to be short of funds, and we cannot save enough money going into 17 to ensure the level of service that we have now.
And that's
what it comes down to.
Mr. Mayor, and through the chair to the mayor, that's I think the most challenging part when you explain it to the average citizen who doesn't understand municipal budgets. I was at a block club meeting last night. We had pretty smart, astute people there, and I was explaining to them about how we have lived within our means, and we have saved enough money, and we've been carrying over, but there's not going to be probably $40 million at the end of this year to carry over to next year, and that's the real dilemma that we face. And when you think about and listen to all the rhetoric that's happening on the presidential national arena right now, you know, it's such a cynical view of what reality is. And they speak in half-truths where they're picking out pieces and parts that helps their narrative make an important statement.
Excuse me, Council President, no, that's a political agenda.
Right.
That's what that is. And whenever you see that, that's a political agenda. If we're going to have an honest discussion, which I've offered this council,
Right.
around what happens in 17, that will include not only increased revenue through tax increase, but also an increased service, and to have a dialogue as to what that is.
Right.
That's why this conversation I was having with Councilor Reed, perfect fit.
Right.
Have the conversation. I'm not opposed to it. And whether it's in building and housing, which has been one of your pet peeves for years, ever since I've been in city government. So but we're at that opportune time. Why? Because we have reached a point where there is a clear choice.
Right.
It is not a political thing. It's a clear choice as to whether or not Cleveland can do this or Cleveland can do that. It's a clear choice.
Yeah.
And what I'm offering, no matter which council person it is to have an honest discussion about what those choices are. Mm-hmm. What those choices are, because, you know, we put it on, we need to let people know what will we purchase with additional money, whether it's in OEO, whether it's in building and housing, whether it's in recreation, whether it's in, I don't know where it might be.
Sure.
But that is a genuine and honest discussion, not a political discussion.
Mayor, you know, I sit in a unique position to see what municipalities are going through, not only here in our region, but across the United States. There's not a major city or a city our size that isn't experiencing the exact same things that we are.
It's all in how you deal.
It's all in how you deal with it and respond. And I will tell you, right now, you have mayors and council members all across the United States who are cutting services, who are privatizing service, who are laying off employees. And
Hey, can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
And Council President, Councilman, and that is what I'm trying not to do.
right,
I'm trying not to privatize
Right.
government service.
Right.
I'm trying not to cut service. I'm trying not to lay off people. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to deliver the service
Right.
according to what we have. And if anybody wants to move money around this budget, it's your prerogative.
sure.
But you're going to take it from somewhere, because there ain't nothing left.
Well, Mayor,
Ain't nothing left. And so my point is very simple.
right,
That what you mentioned is exactly what we're trying to prevent.
right,
We're an urban center. We're no different than any other city across this country. We want to ensure, however, that we maintain quality service, and with this plan, increase that quality and increase the amount of it. Maintain employment as necessary to deliver that service, not cut it. And in that, to deal with these other things that are not part of the budget, but are really essential for us to move ahead as a city, and that is the things around people.
Right.
And how do we deal with people?
Mr. Chairman, I'm almost wrapping up. Mayor, I do want to recognize your Chief of Government Affairs, Ms. McCall, who's the chair of APTA, American Public Transit Association, and
Your chair.
and her ability to look at issues on a national platform. And as you know, I'm the vice president of the National League of Cities. Next year, I'll be the president of that organization. And
Which is a lot of leverage, by the way.
it is, and I want to use it smartly. I was, this past summer, in Michigan, leading a conversation with municipal leaders all across that state, talking about what we're talking about right now. And there's nearly a half a dozen cities in that state that are facing severe financial situations where they're even considering thinking about mergers and consolidations. There's a couple up there that are looking at bankruptcy. You see what's happening with Flint. They can't even manage their own water system. Thankfully that we have a smart relining program there. But this is happening all across the United States. And here within our region, you have municipalities that are struggling to make ends meet. I would really like to see, this is not a conversation that you should be leading, but I really think that our county executive, working with the other county executives within our region, should really start having a hard conversation about how do we deliver municipal services. Because we do have our governor who's running around the country talking about what a great job he did balancing the state budget, but he did it on the backs of local government. And nearly $115 million over 5 years, he has taken from us. But the reason but those dollars, based on us agreeing back, I think it was like 1935, to a state income tax, was afforded that local government return. And so,
If you could,
I'm wrapping up. I want to give the mayor one last opportunity to respond. What is your thoughts about how there could be better or smarter regional cooperations? And do you have any thoughts about, I know you're laser focused on the operations of the city of Cleveland, but you are the mayor of the second largest city in our state, and your voice matters.
Council President, Councilman, if you recall, I was the one who asked, I think, then Senator Turner to introduce a law that will allow municipalities to enter into contracts so that they could provide
Right.
service. Before that, people talked about it, but it was illegal to do it. And when, again, it goes to, people have a lot of conversation about something to come time to do something, and then you get all the opposition
right.
pull, all this other kind of stuff. So, with that being said, I'm a fan of a regional economy, where I believe that our economy should compete nationally and internationally as a region. And we should coordinate that in a way that we don't poach from each other, we don't steal from each other, which means we steal revenue from each other. And that is why about 9 years ago, we started the water service agreement, where we entered into contracts with suburban communities under the condition that we don't poach from each other. And that if a company decides to move for its own business interest, not because I created a higher tax abatement or bigger grant, then what we would do, we would share the income tax associated with that company for a period of time until such time as that space was backfilled with another company. So that's one thing. So regional economy, I believe, is essential. What the policy around creating a regional government that delivers service becomes more problematic because it's really a question of who gets the service. Who gets the service? And counties are not designed to deliver service. They're really designed for social service, but now since this reform, it is now looking to be an economic engine also, but still not a service. So what we have to do is we have to look at what is of benefit to us, not only in terms of does it help us in our bottom line, what it costs us, but are our citizens better off in terms of receiving service? Because there are scenarios where you can enter into agreements with people to consolidate just for the sake of reducing cost, but that doesn't mean your people going to get any better service, and in some scenarios they'll get worse service. So those are the two factors that always have to be in consideration. One, does it give me an economic benefit in terms of costing me less? But secondly, but primarily, are the people of Cleveland better off as a result of that consolidation in terms of the level, quality, and quantity of services gets? The latter is very problematic, to just assume that because it costs you less money, that you're gonna get better service. It's not. And that's the biggest problem I have with that.
I want to
Thank
thank
you,
you.
Mayor.
But it's not an impossibility,
Okay.
but it really takes some thoughtfulness other than just trying to save money.
I just want to thank you for your leadership on this issue, and I know this is a conversation that mayors, particularly big city mayors, don't want to have, but I want to just congratulate you for doing that.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Plunzic?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, my honorable colleagues, honorable mayor. You know, I look upon these budgets as a unique opportunity to learn, and I always learn something new. And coming in here for this, it's always been very special to me because I never thought I'd be in city council. When I was a kid, being a public official was not on my radar screen. So to me, it's very special. And so I've approached it as such. I didn't get elected to build a law practice. I didn't get elected to get rich, just like you. And I look at your predecessor, Lonnie, took the same approach. What concerns me in looking at the general fund budget is that we, as a city, and I want to back up a moment, we are a band of brothers and sisters around this table.
That's right.
To me, this is a very special body. And unfortunately, so often the people of the city of Cleveland don't realize how critical it has been in a role that is played in saving this city at one time or another over the history, okay? And so we are a band of brothers, and you are part of this band of brothers. So I always look upon it as we, collectively as we. What concerns me when I look at the budget and what my experience has been this last year, we can build things, but we can't maintain things, okay?
You mean in terms of public facilities?
Right, okay. I'm greatly concerned about the level of service, which is either just adequate or in some cases mediocre. Okay, you touched on it briefly. So, and you've also touched on public service. There are some departments, some divisions that function very well, and there are some that don't. My own observation, again, I think we have some departments or some divisions, it seems like we never have a commissioner in them, which I don't understand. Streets is one, which to me is a critical area, not having a commissioner. Waste collection, not having a permanent commissioner. My citizens, your citizens, all of our citizens, we're paying for services today, and yet I see these constant breakdowns. We all witnessed the problems at the airport. We saw the problems in the health department. We saw issues in waste collection, streets last year, and I'm really concerned about supervision. I'm really concerned about supervision. And see, I'm old school. I am appreciative to have a city job. I'm proud to have a city job. I have health care, I have a pension, and I come to work every day. And there's some people who work for this city who don't appreciate that, of having a job and health care and a pension. And somehow we collectively, we have got to send a message to those people. You don't want to work, you're not working for the city of Cleveland. You're gone. Any which way whatever we have to do, you're out of here, okay? But to see some of these repeated breakdowns, and like in waste, 274% increase in overtime, and then you talk to people, and you and I, we go back a lot, we know a lot of people. You know, people get suspended, or written up, never fired. We don't have enough laborers, we don't have enough this, we don't have enough that. And at the same time, in the Glenville area, and in the western portion of my ward, I've got a major dumping problem, and I attribute it to going down to bulk collection once a month.
Attribute to what?
Bulk collection once a month. I don't think we saved any money. Because now we got stuff being dumped all over the place. So I don't want to hear from these guys that we save money At the same time, I got a massive dumping problem because these absentee, these slum landlords, if it don't get picked up, they go down to the empty house, an empty lot, and dump it. That's just what they do. Yeah.
Mayor?
Council President, Councilman, you're making the case.
Yeah.
You're making the case. It's not that we don't fully recognize that we've gotten to the point that just having efficiency doesn't work, because we're beyond that. Now we're into, as you said, not being able to do what we know we need to do in order to provide quality service. That's where we are now.
Okay.
And that's the point about, if, believe me, if I had to cobble together $42 million, which means I had to save money during 15, because I didn't have it, I had to save money during 15 in order to have $42 million to put into 16's budget. That means I didn't hire everybody in January.
Very much.
It meant I didn't do A, B, C, and D. So you're absolutely right. You're making the point. Now, but in terms of accountability, we do fire people. You know,
You need to fire some more, okay? Okay?
it all depends. I just don't fire people just to fire.
I understand that.
You know, because as you said, you know, these are
Right.
people who have families, they have lives, many of these people work for the city for a long time.
Right.
But there are certain things that you have to pull your weight. And if you're doing things that are inappropriate,
Right.
or you're not pulling your weight in a way, and you're in progressive discipline and stuff like that, we fire people, but it's not where we go first. Now, the other thing to that is, just like what Councilman Zone was talking about, what this does, and what a lot of people don't realize, city employee, it leads to consequences. Because if you follow the scenario, either you privatize it or you eliminate it.
That's right.
And that is what's happening all over this country. That's what's happening all over the country. And if you enter into these cooperative agreement for service delivery, you're not ensured that you're going to get any better service.
That's right.
Even though you're paying less money.
Yeah.
So in order for us to have more control over this and have some flexibility, as opposed to doing what the councilman has suggested, that is happening all over the country. People going into bankruptcy, they're privatizing, they're eliminating service, they're laying people off. Rather than do that, what we're proposing is to take this in our own hands, take it under our own control, and to be able, as we, to determine how do we want the city to function moving forward, and particularly in service delivery.
Right.
Particularly in service. So you, to me, you're making the case. Some of this stuff, as you're pointing out, or you're alluding to,
Right.
is just not good employees. But my experience is that the vast majority of public employees are very good employees.
Right. Well, and I'll be the
Very good
first to tell you,
employees.
some of the finest people I've ever met
Good employees.
have worked in city government. But this is what I also know, and you know this as well as I do. This body, this legislative body, I can't change the color of the men's room if I wanted to, okay? Because I don't have that authority. You do. You can change the color of the men's room, okay? And so you're in charge. You're in charge of the ballgame here. And as I hear from my residents, I did last night at St. Jerome's, as I've said to some of my colleagues, I'm not getting great pushback about an income tax increase, because I understand, and 35 years ago, I was here during that one. I'm the only one here during that period of time. And that was not an easy sell. Oh, Kenny was here? I don't know. Okay. That was not an easy sell. Okay, but
It was
we.
a different dynamic.
Right.
It was a different dynamic.
Not an easy sell, but the fact of the matter is, what I'm hearing from my residents is they want to know how it's going to be used, the accountability. Are we going to get a handle on these supervision issues? That's what they want to hear. I believe we have made progress in the city, and I would argue that with anyone. I've been here long enough. There has been progress made in the city. But I also know this, specifically in Glenville, and Jeff and Kev can tell you, because we work very closely together. They're still talking with their feet. They're moving out because what they attribute to be their quality of life, whether it be schools, whether it be services, whether it be crime. And I kidded some of my friends. I said, you're going to be calling Euclid, as they all used to call the old hospital, Euclid Glenville. That's going to be calling the city of Euclid very soon, because that's where so many of our folks have moved into Euclid. But they're the families that you know that we can least afford to lose. They're wage earners. They're concerned about their family. They're concerned about their community. And we're losing those folks. And unless we somehow step it up and show them that we're going to make a difference, that we're going to come in here, we're going to get a handle on these service issues that they see. And the last point I wanted to make, Mr. Chairman, because you touched on it, Mayor, as it pertains to our budget. And again, I'm hoping that to see some statewide, I mentioned this to Matt, some statewide effort to try to get our local government fund back. You know, what they did to us is outrageous. It was a historical agreement between Democrats and Republicans since the 30s, and they broke it. And to have them brag about their budget surplus is outrageous, what they've done to us. And we can't let them get away with it. But the last point is about the schools. Our colleagues are talking about our residents working on these jobs. And I would say this, that when I had the opportunity on the Collinwood Rec Center, working very close with your OEO director, they did a great job on making sure that there were Cleveland residents working on the rec center. And I'll be the first to tell anyone that, okay? But we need on the east side, we need a vocational and technical high school. We need something for our kids on the east side. We don't have it. There's nothing at Collinwood, there's nothing at Glenville. Look at the high schools on the east side, our kids.
Council President, and then you just don't need the training, you need a place for them to go.
That's right.
Because I remember when I went to Max Hayes.
Yeah, I know, I was going to mention it.
I was a machinist. And when I graduated, I went straight into a factory. We no longer
Right.
have those factories. They're not there anymore. And a lot of them are over in Glenville, the abandoned factories, Collinwood,
Right.
Glenville. And so it's you say people talking with their feet, and people do that.
Right.
But it's not just service. It's education.
It's exactly.
It's service, it's safety, it's all these things. It's all of the challenges of an urban community.
Right.
And what people are saying, because I know a lot of people who have left with their feet, and the one thing that they will tell me is that I thought I was going to somewhere better. And there's one thing I knew in Cleveland,
Yep.
that I could at least talk to my council person.
Yep.
Whereas they don't have that same relationship,
Right.
and they don't have that same rapport with their new government, and they find that that which they were running from, they ran to.
Yeah, and you're right, and some of them
And
have
so,
regretted it.
But it doesn't take away from the
Right.
point that we're all have these challenges.
Right.
And that we have to deal with them. And this budget is only part of it. As Councilman Simperman was saying, there's so much other things associated that we do that are not a part of this, that really have more of an impact on not people not voting with their feet.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I look forward to working with you in 2016 on these issues of commonality, service, the income tax. And I want to see us collectively step it up, so our citizens know that, you know what, we get it, and we're trying to do what we can to get these departments and divisions running the way they need to be run.
And again, that's about making a decision and the leadership on that decision.
Thank you, Mr.
That's all that's about.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Cummins?
Thank you. Good morning, or almost good afternoon, Mayor.
And we're getting there.
Yeah.
Try to keep it to the morning.
Right.
Stan.
First of all, I want to congratulate you and your cabinet for the excellent job you've done in really just continuing a decade-long job of really maintaining a stable government. for Cleveland in the face of tremendous challenges. When we did the budget retreat and Chief Silman and Director Dumas came over to discuss it as they do every year, it's really a wake-up call to understand that we're really going to not be able to pinch and save our way, pinch and save our way to stabilization and continuation of what we've done. It should be said that although property tax is only 6% of our revenue stream, and Councilman Brancatelli was discussing the difficulty of the financial crisis and the foreclosure crisis. Generally speaking, it's well known that property taxes, even though they're 6%, they're important, but it's important to know that, generally speaking, it's pretty well known in economic circles that there's usually a 3+ year lag in property tax revenues for municipalities based on improvements in real estate, which we've begun to see the last 2 years, but we're not going to see any real improvements in property taxes for another couple of years because of that well-known fact. In addition, even though things have felt better in the last couple of years, in fact, we've really still have a very sluggish economy, and really through our income tax, which is almost 60%, as you've stated, we're seeing really only from 2013 through your projections in 2016, only a 2% increase per year, really, on average. So these just really underscore the challenges that we have. I want to focus a little bit this morning on really several things. Obviously, the economy and what it's done to our ability to provide core services, potential need for the increase in tax, which you've discussed and are considering. And then also really what it does to our core services and the importance of our core services, as you discussed this morning. But other aspects of, and I think you mentioned Councilman Simperman's comments about things that maybe aren't completely in our control, things such as our workforce development and jobs opportunity, as well as really the health of our residents. I tell our own residents in my ward that, it seems, I guess, somewhat unfortunate and unfair, that's what life deals us, that we don't always get credit for stability, providing stability. Too often, what gets reported on most is decline in mistakes that we all can make. But in fact, I think the story of Cleveland really this past decade under your leadership has been one of stability, and that's not been easy. Too often I see your office has done a good job in the administration at trying to educate, which we need to continue to do, the public on our current fiscal position. Although there's more work to be done. I remember in 2009 and 10, the difficulties of having to approve furloughs for our employees. The repeated years of 0% patterns in terms of our union contract negotiations. And some in the community and even outside of Cleveland are complaining that, we're looking at a potential 0.5% tax increase, but yet, we're facing increases in wages. Well, they don't understand how much we've tightened our belt and what our employees have gone through this past decade.
The wage increase, I think, was what? 1, 2, and 2.
Right.
Which is modest.
Well, I mean, I haven't looked at it, but I think if we looked over the past 10 years, we definitely
And then we had 0, 0, 0.
we definitely have not been keeping up with inflation for our employees, and generally speaking, government employment doesn't always provide, particularly in this last decade, opportunities for growth in wage improvement for our employees. So we've gone through a lot in this past decade. Overall, though, I want to turn to something a little bit selfishly regarding the capital budget. I know you're aware that Councilman Simperman and I have actually met with Chief Silman, Chief Ripka, the Development Cluster, specifically about a request of $8 million for the capital fund of the 25. And I know we've been told that that's an aggressive request, but we do feel the time is now. I look forward in this first quarter to be able to meet with you personally. Councilman Sippert and I have been working very closely, particularly since 2014, with the new redistricting, because we share such a jagged, difficult boundary of two of the West Side's really lowest income and lowest educational attainment neighborhoods of Clark, Fulton, and Stockyards. And interestingly enough, we've really been able to pull together some interest in our civic leaders. We want to meet with you along with 4 civic leaders, including Albert Radner, Fred Geis, Bernie Moreto, and Akram Boutros, really to discuss with you what you said earlier about, we don't have a lot of resources, but we need to use them wisely and invest in our resources and build off of others' investments. So obviously the main thing that's driving that, and we'll talk about it this quarter, is the investment from Metro Health.
Mayor?
Council President, Councilman, I'm fully aware of the project you're talking about. Is the Villa?
Well, it's La Villa, yes.
La Villa. And I'm familiar with the request. We're not at that stage to say yes or no to that.
Right. Understood.
We're not. And I know that a lot of the synergy around that in terms of the policy of creating ongoing stuff where you just don't do something, a project, and then after the subsidy goes away, the project goes away. That's a great neighborhood where we can actually make some progress. A lot of it had to do also with what was happening at Metro Health.
Absolutely. Right.
And I don't see them moving as aggressively as they thought they would move on that. So there's a great connection between the investments Metro Health was going to make plus what the plan and the strategy around the village.
Right.
Around the village. So a lot of this has to do not just with the request for a lump sum of money and what that lump sum of money is for, but also those other private investments around that so we can leverage it. So, Dr. Boutros has been, very public and very aggressive on his strategy of improving the campus, and not only the campus, but the neighborhoods around the campus. And that is what makes this attractive if all the component parts fit together.
Right. Absolutely.
Just something by itself is not as attractive.
Right.
It's not as attractive.
Well, and as you said, we'll be
Because
discussing it.
if it's just it by itself, then we have programs and funding for projects.
Right. Absolutely.
And so far, that's what it looks like right now without that private investment coming forward. But if you bring in, the corporate community to the table along with the major institution, it begins to sound better.
Right.
Right.
Well, I look forward to talking to you more about that and understand what you need to do in terms of weighing the necessities of the city and where that investment will be. I want to transition, though, talking about Metro Health. One thing that they have done, to your and the council president and the county executive's interest in reducing infant mortality rates. I think we're in a period right now. Metro Health's actually matched a $250,000 grant from the Kresge and Robert Wood Johnson Foundation for something called the Build Health Challenge, which the health department's very much involved in. And it really does get to the issues of the environmental health effects of our residents. And I think that is an extremely important thing to be looking at. I know government can't do everything, but I think one thing that we absolutely need to continue is our work with the county and the county agencies that provide services, not the county itself, as you said, to really seeing what we can do to improve access to health care. The Medicaid expansions is one thing that I'll give the governor some credit for. That's about it, apart from the local government fund reductions that we've talked about. But I think the other thing that really does concern me, and I really did some soul searching in 2014 with my new third term, was this issue of health as well as job opportunities in really the education. And you've done a great job with the Cleveland Plan, going 4 years now, looking for renewal of the levy, which will need to get support from the community. But one of the things that really has struck me in these last few years is the work that we have to do with literacy. There's a few organizations, and I'm working with my colleagues around the table. We've opened up a new office of Seeds of Literacy on the east side. In our educational attainment in some of our neighborhoods, for almost 50% of our population is between 3rd and 5th grade. And unfortunately, they're not even able to take advantage of our jobs programs from the state because their level of attainment for education is so low. So I think this is, we're working with Grace Gilbane and others to look at what other resources we may have, but it's about trying to leverage the state and federal resources for literacy.
Council President, Council, right, how do you leverage it, how do you collaborate, how do you partnership, because the city of Cleveland doesn't have to own every initiative. We can be supportive of someone else's initiative.
Right.
And they can own that initiative, and we can just be supportive. And then there are other things that are just that important, essential to us, that we should own the initiative, and then other people collaborate with us. But you're right, nothing happens if you don't have good collaboration.
Well, and part of the challenge with the collaboration, or the question of collaboration, is I met with some business leaders in the past months or two and had discussed about how, discussed and tried to explain the cuts in our funding from the local government, the state, and all the things that we've done, plus the sluggish economies I mentioned. And, one of their replies was, well, in terms of the state government's cuts, it's where we're going, and we're there, and we're going to continue in that vein. And it looks like the city will have to raise its income tax. I find it extremely frustrating to hear.
These are probably from people who are anti-tax.
Well, I don't know if they're.
Probably would say that,
they
you
may
need.
be anti-tax from the federal and the state perspective,
Right,
but
that's right.
by the way, you all at the city can do it.
Right. That's right.
What do we say to our civic leaders in our business community about
Well,
that?
it's very clear to me that what we have to say to them is the truth of the matter, that their policies, even though may have in the short runs benefited them, in the long run, it would be to their detriment. It would be to their detriment. Because as they cut tax on the upper level and they eliminate funding to the agencies that you're talking about who provide direct service to people in need, as they do all of that, then what happens, they force on local communities the need and responsibility to raise revenue. We have the least ability to do that and to do it in the amounts necessary. We have the least ability to do that. So what you say to them is that that chicken will come home to roost too.
Right.
And that they may have some short-term benefit to them, but in the long run, that chicken is going to come home to roost too.
Just lastly, in terms of core services, I know in terms of trying to maintain the stability over the last decade and really having flat to negative budgets in terms of our revenue streams and really trying to save, in effect, we have made decisions to some degree in terms of attrition rates, et cetera, and that they have, that those attrition rates have affected our services. We've made some capital investments for our division of streets in terms of what we're doing through the leadership of yourself and Council President, in terms of investing in our streets more. We've had some hiccups in our waste division, I think. Finally got everybody on automated containers, but have had some challenges in recent years. In some of our divisions, such as either our Division of Recreation and even our forestry, we've really had a reduction in services. I know in forestry, and it really gets to the quality of life issues in core services, is that I know last year we didn't trim any trees, for example, and to try to explain to residents a tree that's in the tree lawn, and that, that's a whole other issue. It's my tree, it's the city's tree. Right. Why don't you do it? Some of these issues can be extremely frustrating, apart from, of course, the safety issues that we're dealing with the DOJ. And I think that, your consideration of a 0.5% as opposed to a 0.25% really gets to the heart of this, is that we've already, I think, experienced some reductions in services already. If we don't make up not only for that, but then improve, I think we're going to lose the momentum, at least the civic pride and the momentum we're feeling. But that pride does not always trickle down and get to all of the corners of our neighborhoods. So I think that's going to be a very important issue, and I tend to believe that we'll need to look at the 0.5. But I think, as I said, I'm looking forward to working with your administration and doing whatever we can, first of all, to do that education for the public and our business community and our civic partners in terms of why we need these things, why we need a lot of things based on the county renewals of the health and human service levies this year, based on the school district's renewal, and then ultimately based on a potential income tax. Those are not going to be easy things, but I think through your leadership and stewardship of this past decade, I think a very strong case can be made for those improvements. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Johnson, Councilman Jeff Johnson, and then Ken Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'm already on board in support of our discussion about doing the income tax increase. I'm clear about that. I don't require any convincing that we are at a point that requires more revenue in light of the broken partnership with the state. I do hope that, and I think Councilman Polinick asked the question, is there a specific effort that we're going to make to try to get some money out of the state in the next year? I know we've hired someone, and I'm assuming we'll be working together. Or is basically, are we feeling that there is absolutely nothing that's possible from that end?
Council President, Councilman, you have to have the fight. You have to have the fight. And if we just accept it and think we're not going to win, then not only won't we be any better off, we'll probably be worse off. So we're going to have to engage. And that's, when they have their biannual budget, when that's being proposed, but also there are some state legislatures who are considering how do they come together to represent this need, because what you really have a minority controlling everything, a minority of the majority.
Yeah.
See, and so, but the majority of the majority and the majority of the minority really represent interests like ours. But they haven't been able to coalesce under that for whatever reason. And since you've been down there, you know the dynamics of that. I've had an occasion to do some things down there around education reform and other things. And it's a very different world.
Yeah.
Very different world, very parochial, very political, partisan, and all that stuff. So there is no coalition of people who support the interests of urban centers, even though they make up the majority of the majority and the majority of the minority. And so we want to begin to nurture that kind of conversation as to where their political self-interest is.
Because obviously our efforts toward the income tax, that effort will not replace the need for what we're doing. One of the things is that 2015 has been a difficult year. Ari, we could feel it through your explanation that it's been difficult for you. Let me just, and you've been here, it's been difficult for us. It's been difficult for me. Yeah. And I'll join in the compliments relative to you staying on top of the numbers. I think the reports have been excellent to give us an idea of what the truth is. But I also want to compliment my colleagues, because I'm telling you, and I know it was part of a kind of a heated back and forth, we are doing more than talking every day.
I'm not saying really to you because you've been here, I'm really saying to those who listen, that this process of urban government is more than Mayor Jackson and his team that's behind him. It's really about the legislative branch, the ones who gets the calls and ask for why are the trash being picked up at 7 p.m.? Why is my time changed? Why is this? Why is that? I need this, I need that. And they have every right because they're paying taxes. So I just want to, we're equal partners. Now, I don't have the ability to do stuff like you do. If I can make the trash people pick up trash and not leave it, you know, spewed on the ground, which only a few do, but I get that call. Oh, yeah. We get that call.
Yeah, absolutely.
When they pick it up, clean up, put it right, I don't get a call. I get the call when it's, you know, or when the dead squirrel's been there for 2 weeks, even though the others got picked up within whatever hours. So you know, I signed up for this. This is my second tour, so I'm good with that. But having gone through that, part of my frustration, and part of it's been reflected on Monday nights, is that when I passed the budget, when the budget was passed, there was a certain belief that there would be certain positions filled. And then there was always this tug of war I felt. Okay, as we look at the $42 million, we know clearly part of the $42 million was that positions weren't filled.
Right, or delayed.
Or delayed. Not always, Mr. Chairman, not always an upfront explanation to me along the way. So I'm standing up and I'm complaining about, or he's complaining about housing inspectors, or my love, landmarks where a person has been 2 years since his position's been filled, yet it's been in the budget. So instead of me doing that dance with you, we really just need to be honest with each other that if this budget, you kind of alluded to it when you said, we cannot save money, we have to spend it all. Right. So if what I'm going to vote on, what am I going to review and vote on, every position I vote on, I would expect to be able to know that that actually is going to be a position that we are going to seriously try to fill and actually do it however the normal process is. And so that's one of, and so I just want to reiterate that this budget is actually going to reflect the hiring that we intend to do, because those impact services, because the workload of those who are left goes up. And then that means there is a delay.
There's stress.
And there's stretch. And
Can I read?
yeah, that's really a question.
Council President, Councilman, you summarized it pretty good. That we have in previous years, and I've been upfront about it. So it's not like every year I haven't told people that, you know, we're going to have to save money during the year to be able to balance out. Now, sometimes that don't translate into, you know, the reality of the moment. You know, that's a high-level thing, but then you get down to the moment, right? There's no way that I'm going to be able to save money this year in order to fill the gap next year. There's no way.
No way.
And in order just to maintain the level of service that we're doing now, I'm going to have to bring people on. I'm going to have to bring them on. What we do, in all honesty, what we do is weekly. We look at overtime. Some departments we look closer at than others. We look at critical hire to see whether or not this is a critical hire, and if we hire this person, what then am I missing if I don't hire this person? And what am I getting if I do hire this person? Because what we've also found in terms of what the councilman talking about, some levels of inefficiency, you can hire up and not get anything different.
That's true.
So then it goes to what the councilman mentioned about supervision and accountability of the supervision. So all these things, and it goes to what the Councilman Pruitt talked about, are we going to have the same structure? And if we are going to have the same structure, do we have people in place that are going to ensure the accountability and the follow-through on certain things? See, so all of these things are what we're looking at. And you're right, that there's some positions that we wound up not hiring simply because I need to save $42 million. There are other positions that we brought on the last quarter of the year where I would have liked to have brought them on in the first quarter or the second quarter of the year, so I can save $42 million. But as you know, and as every councilman around this table knows, our core season is summer, spring and summer. And that's when we try to ramp up for seasonals to kind of deal with the issue of lot cutting, playgrounds, all those other kind of things that are more seasonal. Winter, you have seasonal with the snow removal. So let me give you an example. If I had the ability to increase capacity, what I would do is this. We currently do about 3 cuts a year on lots, vacant lots. Say, for instance, our goal is to do 4. What would it cost to do 4 cuts? Do I bring people on earlier and keep them longer? See? It's not that I have more people. Yeah, I just have them bring them on earlier and keep them longer during the seasonal. I can get an extra cut in. The thing about waste collection, we amended the budget to show you, I think we put, how much did we put in the dumping initiative? How much? About $600,000 that was not in the original budget. So what I had to do, the example you point out, where we had tons of illegal dumping all over the city. And so I had to keep seasonals on for additional periods of time, and to deploy equipment there so that we could actually pick up all this dumping stuff. It cost me $600,000 more. Well, that did mean that I had to take it from somewhere. So maybe I didn't do something over here that I would have liked to have done. What this does, and I really appreciate the fact that you've always had political integrity and that you're upfront about whatever it is you're doing. And so when you've said that you support the 0.5%, I really appreciate that, because that really gives me the ability to begin to have the conversation around the way that we're doing it now doesn't work for us anymore. I have to be able to move forward. The only way I can move forward is if I have more revenue. At the same time, we have to look at the way in which we deliver service. At the same time, we have to have a concerted effort with our state delegation around what is happening with local government fund, all these other kinds of things. All these things will take a real community, political and civic effort if we're going to be successful.
One of the elements that underlies my, if anybody's been paying attention over the last few years, when I do challenge, it is usually around the area of, I don't think the private sector does enough, because there's certain subject matters. You know, I'm big on trying to fight crime. Zach has said it, and many of us have said it. And so beyond the discussion of the general fund, within the context of what we feel is part of the reason why people may leave us, or they become so frustrated they become detached from participating and being involved in the community.
They get numb.
Exactly. And so the ultimate question is, what is the role of, when we deal with the issue of investment, what is the role of those who benefit to go beyond the neighborhood in which they are existing or which they feel is worth investing in? And that goes back to your earlier discussion. And so from your bully pulpit and from our side, what's overseeing all of this is the question of how can, I'm just going to use one of the main issues, how can crime be prevented with a stronger partnership? Not just improving education, not just in doing the things you talk, but ultimately today, because there's long-term and there's short-term things that we can do to try to prevent crime. And so violent crime in the city of Cleveland, if you look at statistically, is not in every neighborhood,
at equal rates. There is statistically areas in which it predominates most. I don't need to go over, I've said it on the floor, we know it's predominantly an African-American community. We know it's predominantly in certain neighborhoods that I can just run off. Many of them are in the Northeast. So the private sector's involvement in fighting crime, which impacts their investment in the city of Cleveland, is that connection that this year, more and more, I'd like for us to continue to talk about how to do that on crime. I know we did it with infant mortality. I know we did it with sustainability, but on crime prevention.
To the Council President, to the Councilman, it's been my experience, people have to come out of theory. As long as we allow them to have a conversation about that issue, in this case, violent crime in Cleveland, it would just be a good conversation. So what we have to do is that we have to call the roll. And what I found with the private sector is that their willingness, it comes from two factors. One is for them to see it and then personalize it, because sometimes they can't personalize it even though they see it.
Absolutely.
See?
Yeah.
But the other thing is you have to give them a clear investment strategy. That's just the way they think. You have to give them a clear investment strategy because they don't want to have to figure it out themselves. But if you are mayor, council, and we come and say, this is where we see you being able to assist us. It could be in jobs, it could be in mentorship, it could be internship, that kind of exposure. It could be in some dollars to support, as the Councilman Reed, or the interrupters. It could be all these kinds of things. If they're clear as to the overall strategy and what they're purchasing, they tend to operate better there. But their sense of urgency has to be created by them personalizing it and actually seeing how this benefits them. Or on the other side, just the compassion of it. That is a conversation that we are having, and it's a conversation that we'll continue to have. But they're not, in my experience, contrary to what people think, they do look to government for leadership on certain issues. And if we're silent on it, then they won't do anything. If we're vocal about it, but all we're doing is having a conversation about it, they're not going to do anything. We have to have the strategy in place, a holistic strategy, so they can see that, I'm investing in this and I'm contributing to a better outcome. Then they tend to respond pretty well then.
It is that, and I'm in total agreement, it is that need for us. I actually think the first steps are administrative, legislative, agreement on the model we need to use.
We have to be together, right.
And then go out to convince them.
Because what they don't want, excuse me, Council President, what they don't want is to get caught up in somebody's political agenda.
Right.
See, that's what they don't want. If they see it as a real effort that doesn't have a political agenda, they're more receptive.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilman.
In many ways, this is not so unknown to them. It's not a priority. This is my opinion.
That's right.
It is not a priority that the Glenville community have had a significant amount of homicides in 2015 that me and the other two are dealing with. Because they don't feel it, it's not urgent, it doesn't do, government will handle it.
Right.
But at the same time, I understand the direct connection. So what I'm saying here today is the need for us to take the fight against crime. First of all, we all get the connection between crime and economic development.
And
crime
education.
and deterioration of hope, deterioration of the will, and frankly, the exodus that is occurring. But I think that I have asked, I believe we need to actually sit down and actually have a strategy to get more resources to do an overall plan, not just Stan's partnership, and not just, it's very similar to what we did for health. That there was this need to do a healthier Cleveland, but we need a safer Cleveland.
Which is part of healthier Cleveland.
But from my vantage point, what I'm of course there is, because I'm one of the big advocates of healthcare connection to violence. But on the issue of sitting down and strategizing on identifying, triggering the access points to reduce crime, whether it is health, whether it's economic development, short-term, long-term, I really believe that the request ultimately is use the model we used for health. When we felt that Cleveland needed to be healthier, we actually came together physically, and we planned out a continuous overtime approach. And we went and got individuals, and we did it with sustainability as well. So my point is made there. It's just my thoughts on how to get around this notion that the general fund is going to be our avenue toward resolving this, and it's not. It's not.
That's right.
And Mr. Chairman, on the issue of revitalization, the other question, when we talk about neighborhood revitalization, the ultimate question is, what is the face of revitalization that we are talking about? When we move into a neighborhood, and is success of the revitalization of a neighborhood meaning that higher income people come in and it pushes out lower income? Is that success? Because a house, so it's really trying to balance to be able to keep the citizens I have in my neighborhood now and still benefit from a business strip, for example, that has amenities. But the private sector doesn't in and of itself choose to invest in those neighborhoods unless, as you say, we come in and create an infrastructure. So I'm basically signing off on this idea that even though 25 million is just the beginning for the Neighborhood Development Fund, we need to be able to understand that there are certain projects that if we make them sustainable actually impacts the livelihood, whether it's an East Side Market. Me and my two colleagues recognize that we cannot subsidize that. We cannot have that subsidized.
It has to have.
It has to exist on its own.
That's right.
Even though the state and local is putting money in to get it started, it has to sustain itself.
That's right.
So I'm looking forward to working with you on doing that. And let me just say, part of what I understand through what Councilman Reed was talking about earlier is that this private sector, again, even though we have community benefits, it's very difficult for us to continue to keep saying the same thing, higher, 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 when in fact, in some cases, we still believe that these folks don't want to do it. We got the operating engineers, for example, fighting in Columbus to kill off the Fannie Lewis law.
See,
And you know,
if I may, and
Mayor?
Council President, Councilman, you're making my point exactly in the point I was trying to make. Whenever you are making progress, anybody allow you to have a good conversation. Because that's all you're doing is having a conversation. But whenever you are making progress and they look and see what you're doing as something that they believe is detrimental to them, you're going to have pushback. And the pushback that we're getting, Councilman, is from exactly what you said. We were able, since President Obama's been president, I've been calling the White House, sending letters about everything I can around how to ensure that when you send federal dollars into Cleveland, that you free up by getting rid of these regulations and rules, free it up so we can begin to ensure that that money stays local. See, and we were doing it in Cleveland, and that's why I have a disagreement with the councilman. Contrary to that, we've done so much better than we've done in the past in terms of people working and minorities getting conquered. We have substantial better. But what happened was it was just here in Cleveland. What occurred was the federal government, through the federal transportation people, said that they were now going to do a pilot. And that pilot would allow for local governments to do exactly what we're doing. That's when the people at the state, the contractors and the union at the state, even though the contractors here are in agreement with us, the unions here are in agreement with us because they've adjusted to it and they find that it's not costing them any more money, it's not degrading their outcome of their project, and they're actually doing better this way. They actually do better. But now, since now we're not talking about a few $1 million here and there, we're talking about billions of dollars, you have people reacting to it, so, oh no, we can't have that statewide. And so what they're saying is, we want to make it just like they did with home rule and residency, just like they did with guns, just like they've done it with everything. We want to make it illegal for local municipalities to set local hiring and contracting rules on federal dollars. That ultimately winds up being ODOT dollars because ODOT is the pass-through.
Right, right.
So that was my point. It wasn't in a disagreement with what was being said. It was in the assertion that there was nothing being done, and I'm saying, look, we do stuff. I fight this stuff every day. I'm fighting that very issue now. We were able to forestall it in Columbus on the last session.
At the budget, right, pull it out.
But now it's back up again.
It's back.
And so that's my point about whenever you're making substantial and real progress, when you really put in the work in, you're going to get pushback. You're going to get pushback. And that's what we're having now. So how is it that in a country where unemployment is so high, how is it in a country where people feel that they're disadvantaged and not treated fairly? How is it in a country where you have social unrest around all this stuff that somebody says, somebody says, well, we're not going to allow you to give anybody a job. We're not going to allow you to give a local company a contract. Matter of fact, we're going to make it illegal for you to do it. And if you do it, executive, we're going to hold you responsible and have you potentially civilly liable for executing your program. So my debate was not about the subject matter. It was more about whether or not I'm knowledgeable of stuff or whether or not I'm doing something about it.
Well, when it comes to, I think we all are in agreement that we need to do the hiring. I get frustrated with my former place of employment down there, and I mean, I really think that the relationships, going to war with them or cajoling, whatever the method, we have to stop. We have to try the best we can to organize and stop these efforts to kill what we're trying to do and provide access to jobs to these folks. And my last statement, Mr. Chairman, is that once again, it's going to be painful in 2016. And what I mean by that is that there are certain expectations that our citizens have for city services. And so we're both trying to maintain what we have, at the same time make a case for for more, even though 2/3 of the money is coming outside the city. Nevertheless, I think I'm ready to make that case. I'm ready to have a discussion with you about where best to spend the money should it be, and that's my role, so should we get it. The efficiency issue is part of what and Michael has been clear on this. The folks want to know efficiency, and once we make that case, then we need to tell them what they will get, like you said, versus what they wouldn't get if they didn't do it. And so I'm ready to make that case. And along the way, though, there's going to be a natural administrative, legislative back and forth at times on specifics. There'll be some tension. There'll be some issues. Best I can do is just pledge to be fair to you as I analyze and disagree. But I do expect this year, at least, for folks to not have me hold expectations of certain expenditures, when in fact they've already known along the way they're never going to fill that position. It seems, I just don't need that. I need to be able to have much more feelings that there is a truthfulness in that. I don't want to underestimate the fight that I had last year about certain departments and the frustrations, and no one ever coming to me and saying, this is the real truth. All right?
Okay.
This,
Let me- if I can-
I know he does it once a year, but I mean along the way.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay,
Chairman.
thank you, Councilman.
And
Mayor,
if I may,
please.
Council President, at any time, and I offer this to anybody, because I've never denied a council person a request if they want to meet with me about anything. And whenever, whatever subject matter they want to meet about. And it's the one thing I won't do is lie to you. And so I have, at any time, I'm open for any discussion. Now, the formal discussion around capacity on service delivery, once we complete what we've completing with the service side and then the police staffing deployment, then I'm willing to come back to council and say, look, here's where we are, and here's what I recommend. How that happens after that, is a matter of.
One point on that, Mr. Chairman.
10 seconds?
10 seconds, that's all I need. Understand, I've talked, along the way, I talked to directors. And I just want you to understand, this is not a case where I could have walked through your door. I mean, this is not a case where I would actually say, when are we going to hire these folks? And they would tell us, sometimes they'll say it's on your desk, or sometimes they'll say, we don't know yet. They will never say, we do not intend to. And my point is, this year, it appears that's not going to be the dance I'm doing.
Well,
Because
Council-
every one of these folks that I'm
Again.
going to vote on are going to be hired.
Again, Councilman, what I will commit to you is to work with this budget, because I have to balance the thing by the end of the year. Even if I can't carry over anything, I have to balance by the end of the year. So that's a major factor. It's a major factor. But our intent is always to deliver service, is our bottom line.
Sure.
Our ability to do that is a matter of staffing. I will tell you that on routine hiring, they have an open thing to hire routine stuff. What they don't have an open book on, or what they claim to be critical hires that could go one way or another. All right? So my commitment to you, as it's been every year, is that our goal and our whole purpose as a government is to deliver that service. But I have to be honest with you and say that when this year rolls down, it has to be balanced. It has to be balanced. And what I have to do in that year to ensure that is what I have to do. But it's never attempting to use it to do that at the expense of service. I have to balance the budget. The law says so.
Mr. Chairman, first of all, I never will put on you a purposefulness of undercutting service. I'll never accuse you of that. So when decisions are made, because overtime is more than budget or whatever, and you have to shift money, when decisions are made where the budget as presented is changing, I just ask for, whether it's through our leadership or whatever, that if we're going to say, for example, that for the rest of the year, because of whatever expenses was shifted, we're only going to have so many people in building and housing, then I need to know it when that decision is made.
Or we're only going to cut lights twice rather than three.
Right.
All right.
That's all. So I don't.
Thank you. Thank you.
Fine.
Mayor, thank you very much.
that's
Appreciate
it?
your time. Yeah. Councilman, I'm sorry.
All right, you got one.
Thank you, Terrell.
Yes.
Is that John Kasich down there?
Yeah, no, it's right here. Mr. Mayor, I only had a couple of questions. I don't want to
Yes.
go on. We should have been out of here. It's come to my attention over the last couple of weeks
I got mine.
that some cities have actually made arrangements with hospitals, with their local hospitals, to place into their recreation centers child psychologists.
That's a great
And
idea.
these people are not paid, but they are.
That's a good idea.
Thanks, Mayor. so that you can actually find the youngsters that need help before they get hold to a gun.
Right.
Now, it has worked very well in a lot of localities, and some of them have been doing it for years. I would suggest that we look into it because our local hospitals will be acceptable to it.
Council President Collins, I think that's a great idea. When the councilman was talking about what the private sector would do in order to help reduce crime, I think that ties right in. So Natoya, where are you? Yeah, why don't you find out from the councilman what he's referring to?
Okay.
That's a good idea.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, my only other comment along those lines are that a lot of crime is committed by youngsters who cannot go to work simply because they're too young.
Right.
And the recreation centers, our recreation centers in Cleveland, is their last ride. The last stop on the ride is our rec centers for a lot of these youngsters.
That's true.
And we have to, in addition to I'm glad you like the child psychologist. I got, this idea came from my son who was going to be one. Mm-hmm. And he offered to volunteer his time. I could tell you that now rather than later because it was such a good idea I looked into it. And that's what happened. The other component to that is the youngsters that are too young to go to work. And if we intend to cut crime, every dollar we put into the recreation division is a dollar we don't have to put into the police department to arrest the youngsters that go to the rec centers. It's really very simple. If we can properly staff them, if we can properly staff our rec centers, we will automatically cut crime.
Okay. And Council President to the council, and program it because
Yes.
I can go to some rec centers and no larger staff and the programming is excellent and people will scrub the floor with a toothbrush, GI the floor. And I go to another rec center and same number of staff, program is not as good. And then they complain about mopping the doggone place. So that's a matter of leadership and supervision.
Right.
See, because at your rec center, you actually have a real structure of programming and who's responsible for what. And most rec centers are that way. Now, in terms of the kids going to the rec centers, I got my grandkids, it's like a second home.
I know.
They call them rec babies.
That's what they call them.
Yeah, rec babies. These kids who that's where they go. As soon as they get out of school, they run to the rec center.
Right.
And they find safety, solace, they find whatever they need at that rec center.
That's right.
And if you remove that rec center from them, you actually create an enormous void for them.
Right.
And they're almost purposeless as a result of that. So I'm your suggestion around the child psychologist is great. Before we just put money in the recreation, we do have to look at also at how is it functioning from center to center. What is the programming, all those other kind of things, and then we can actually increase. With some more money, we could purchase additional programming, additional capacity to do things. The Muni Football League is a perfect example.
It is.
I don't know how many kids it services a year, but it's well over 1,000.
It's well over 1,000, Mayor.
And then you have the baseball league, you have soccer, it's an ongoing thing where now they're indoors, so it's around basketball, indoor soccer, all those kinds of
That's
things.
right. And we don't have a bad recreation program. I'm not saying that.
No, we don't.
I'm not saying that at all. Well, you do. And we have a good commissioner. I don't have any doubts about him. some of our rec centers, Mayor, need people on the staff that actually care. That is the problem.
And the kids know the difference, don't they?
Yes, they do.
That's
Yes,
right.
they do.
They know the
Because
difference.
they will tell you. They will tell you.
And they know the difference.
That's right. In some of our suburbs here, the youngsters that are going to graduate from high school have to do community service. That's at a lot of the suburbs. And some of them find that when they do community service, either in the schools or the rec centers or wherever they choose to do it, they might like this vocation. They might.
Right.
I would only suggest to you, Mayor, that we talk to the CEO to have that in Cleveland in addition to the other things that we're talking about. It's not that hard to do.
Right. And to go further, Council President, Council, go a little bit further than that, is you know, I budget 5 high school students per rec center.
Yes.
And they work a minimum of 20 hours a month. They get paid $10 an hour. And then in the summertime on school break, they wind up working many more hours. So
Right.
they make and we fire them if they're not doing the job.
That's right.
And we keep them involved in the programming and activity. One of the things that, as you mentioned, their exposure to that it helps them as we look at how do we provide scholarships and help kids who want to go to college or go into a trade. But it also, if the kid wants to look at recreation as a career,
Right.
then we're working with civil service to see how can we give credit for their service in working in that part-time. Because you know all these are on a list, you take a test and stuff.
That's right.
But how do you give some credit for a child who has had that experience and allow them to be able to bid on jobs or take a civil service test to be a rec instructor? How can we move them up the list? So there are
that's
many
great.
ways that we can do that.
I think that's wonderful. My last comment, Mr. President, to the mayor is about the snow. They did better this time than they did last time. The last time it snowed. And I was afraid.
Last time this year or last year?
Oh, last year.
Last year, okay.
Yeah. They did a lot better. And part of it is because of the new equipment that we have. And I was actually afraid it wasn't going to snow this year. You know, so.
Fear not.
But it did, and they, whoever you put in charge of it this time, did a pretty good job.
Well, the man who was in charge in streets, he took a job in Columbus. So he's not there anymore. He just left about a week or so ago. Now we have Randy back over there because, you know, he came out of the streets.
I know.
But in terms of snow removal, we had just that hiccup last year, one hiccup last year, where it took longer to pick it up, and it was because we were chasing complaints.
I understand. I know what it was.
And just like when you're cutting grass, you can't chase complaints.
Right.
And what we did is once I found out that they were chasing complaints, said no more chasing complaints. What you do is you systematically go through the city and you service everybody, not jumping around just because this person called or that person called. And so our ability to do a much better job with the same number of people, even though we have better equipment now, is simply because we're in a system now that services everybody and does it quickly as opposed to chasing complaints.
Well, I just wanted to congratulate you.
I appreciate it.
You know, I've been around this table for a couple of these sessions.
Yeah, longer than you, man.
Almost. I'm not going to point any fingers at him. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Thank you, Council. Mayor, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. All right. We are going to break for lunch for 30 minutes. We'll be back at 1:15 and begin with Finance Director's statement.